And so it totally works. We're not going to throw all our trucks into the Atlantic Ocean and buy new ones tomorrow. It's going to take decades to replace all of that capital and all the infrastructure. So that's going to be a slow transition, and labor markets can deal with transitions that happen at a couple of percentage points a year because people retire. So it totally works. New people don't enter. That's manageable.
You're saying if it takes place over a generation,
absolutely,
then that's something that even though it will be disruptive, it won't be catastrophic.
Exactly. There are about as many of them in the United States as there are long-haul truckers. They're paid less. They're primarily women, but there are just as many. Those jobs can go very, very quickly, right? Because those can be automation can encroach rapidly. I don't think they'll all go. The ones that remain will actually be more specialized. They'll be at the top of the queue, right? When the AI says, "I give up," you will be handed over to the last 20 people standing.
So rather than 20 people, 5 people will handle what's left of the human tasks that need to be handled.
And let's just say that's a mixed bag, right? Those will be better jobs. They'll be higher paid. They'll be more expertise intensive, but there'll be fewer of them, right? And that we'll see this in language translation. We'll see this in call centers. We may see this in software as well, right? Software will bifurcate. We'll have a small number of people who build AI models, who run data centers, who run enterprise software, and they'll be highly paid and highly specialized. And then we'll have infinity vibe coders, right? And they'll be like Uber drivers, right? You'll call them up to write an app for you. They won't be paid nothing. There'll be a lot of them that won't be highly paid. So we're going to see a variety of impacts, but the work that is fully cognitive work, right, is much, much more vulnerable. It can change much more quickly. Eventually, robotics will also, more and more enter the physical realm, but that's still, some ways off.
Let's talk about that, Doron. When we talk about these sort of two areas of work, which is the human expertise that needs to be done, and then physical work where robotics do, everything is moving in that direction. AI feels like it strip mined the entirety of human accomplishment. The 10,000 years that we have spent developing these areas of expertise, these areas of knowledge, the kinds of things that made us feel relevant to the progress of the human condition, AI comes in and 6 months later goes, okay, what else you got? What else are you going to feed me? And then it starts to move forward. So what David's talking about is already a reduction of the human workforce. Is that the thing that you are most concerned about?
Absolutely.
Or is it the eradication?
Yeah. Reduction is first and eradication is later. And in the process, wages be stagnating or even declining. And David, everything David said, I agree with. But there's one other thing to add. Again, it's a wild card because we don't know how quickly these AI capabilities will develop and how quickly they will be adopted. But all of our earlier examples of displacement, which, as I said and David said, haven't been so good for workers, such as during the first 80 years or so of the British Industrial Revolution, or during China and robot shocks, they were confined to a few occupations. Even then, it was very hard for people to relocate and get jobs and newcomers to find jobs.
Right.
But, weavers during the British Industrial Revolution, once power looms came in, they lost about 2/3 of their earnings. But they could then become unskilled factory operators. Blue-collar workers went to construction or other things, or some of them withdrew from the labor force. If Dario Amodei or some of the other people who are most vocal about the capabilities of these models and what they will do to the workforce are correct, there are going to be many sectors at the same time being hit. So yes, if the rest of the economy was booming and 3.5 million customer service representatives were laid off, we could find other jobs for them, perhaps with somewhat lower pay. But what if all occupations are going in the same direction? That is Armageddon. Now, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Now, David just sighed. Yeah. You said Armageddon, and David sighed.
No, I will let David. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be prepared for it, because some people are saying that's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Either those plans are leading trillions of dollars of investment, which are going to come to nothing, or there's going to be a grain of truth in some aspect of it. But either way, we have to be prepared for that. Now, displacement is real.
So you're talking about either this is a financial bubble where an incredible amount of capital is being poured into a technology that ultimately will be a bubble that, resolves nothing and is not worth the investment, which causes a kind of financial catastrophe, or it's real and it causes a personal human labor catastrophe. Is that?
I would say I'm somewhere in between. I think
Okay.
the speed of which will be much slower, which will then lead to a lot of money being lost because the investments need to be
Right.
monetized, and they need to be monetized soon if these investments are going to pay off. So I am in the middle. I think that these capabilities will come at some point, but not as soon as these investments are being motivated by. But I am uncertain enough that either all of it being a bubble or all of it happening within the next 5 years, can I say with good conscience that's a zero probability event? I cannot. I mean, so many technologists are saying, look, in our labs, we have these even more amazing models. I don't believe it. I don't believe it, but I can't say, oh, necessarily it's wrong.
How do you means test these hypotheses?
We cannot. Nobody can, because they're all based on what's going to come next year, and we don't have access to it.
So everything we're doing is we're looking backwards.
We're looking backwards,
but not forwards. David, you were going to say.
Okay, so first, I don't think that the success of AI companies and the value of their investments entirely depends on them displacing labor. If we just got much more productive, that would also pay off, right? So if we got more efficient in healthcare, if we got, better at transportation, if we did education better. So it doesn't all have to come from just throwing people out of work. And it's also important to remember that although these transitions have been wrenching, we're infinitely more wealthy than we were 200 years ago. We are much better off. None of us wants to live
on the main. But obviously, if you look in, I don't think the Rust Belt would say, yeah, that was globalization was great for
us.
No, they're not.
Thank
starving,
you, John Stewart.
Right.
They're
not. They have they're in general they're not starving. They have access. Look, I don't mean to be unsympathetic.
Yeah,
the standard of living in almost anywhere in America, including in the least privileged places, people have indoor plumbing. They are not food deprived by and large. They have some access to education. They have some safety. It's much better than conditions in pre-industrial England.
This is the guy that he was bitching about earlier. Because this guy doesn't have a Nobel laureate.
Although
and the other guy does,
cost, and I don't mean to minimize.
He got a century wrong when he was talking about
and the
working in the mines.
Beneficiaries and are
John
not the same as
called him out straight away.
So it's not like they just
see,
but
you
I
had a Nobel laureate. You got the century right.
Upside potential here as well. We shouldn't only be sentimental about what would be lost. We should also recognize the opportunity to accelerate science, to improve, our adaptation to climate change and energy generation, to improve, medicine, to do education better. We might do it worse. We could do it better. And distribute more of the world's wealth to more of the people in the world. I actually think artificial intelligence, like mobile telephony, can be potentially beneficial to the developing world in a way by increasing self-sufficiency, by giving access to expertise in engineering, in medicine, that is not readily available.
So can I just jump in there?
Please.
Because David and I have been studying these things together and separately for the last 30 years. And almost everything you'll hear from David, I agree with. And most things you hear from me, well, David probably would disagree with them. But anyway, but there is one place of disagreement between me and David put his finger on it. So let me expand, because I think this just, again, underscores the uncertainty.
Okay.
So David and I completely agree that there is a potential to use AI in what we call a pro-worker way.
Okay.
Meaning you make workers more productive. They become better at their jobs. They gain additional expertise. They start performing new and more important and interesting problem-solving tasks. The place of disagreement between me and David is that I think that direction requires a complete change in the focus of the industry, and we won't get it on their current path. The current path is very automation focused.
Right.
Whereas I think David thinks, well, whatever the companies do, somehow better things might come out.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
So I think he's more optimistic about those productivity gains that could then create meaningful jobs. I think we really are squandering that opportunity. That opportunity is there, but we're squandering. And that's the most important reason why I love being in shows like yours where people listen to as opposed to what I say, because I think we need to change the conversation. The conversation shouldn't just be about the doom and the gloom or the amazing promise of AI. It should be about, are we actually using these models, these capabilities for the right thing or the wrong thing? That's the main conversation.
Well, let me mediate the dispute between you and David.
We've tried. Many people have tried. No, okay, that's good.
Before it turns physical, I don't want to get there.
Yeah,
I don't know how close you are to each other's squares.
Right. No, I know I've seen a lot of fistfights on this podcast.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
and things do get out of control.
Yeah.
And if we need to take it to the octagon, we'll take it to the octagon. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with any of that. But I think what we're talking about are sort of two separate things. So I want to see if we can tease those out a little bit. You know, you said a phrase, Doron, that I think is interesting, which is you want to make it, you said worker.
Pro-worker.
You said pro-worker. What David is talking about, I think, is sort of the patina over society, that these advances allow us to fight diseases that we didn't have to do.
Sure. I agree with that.
But it's pro-human to a certain extent, but not necessarily pro-worker. So I guess, David, what I would say to you is, generally those that are deploying these new things are not concerned about being pro-worker in any way. Now, the increase in productivity may have it, they always say a rising tide lifts all boats. And I always say, unless you don't have a boat,
right.
And then really then it's just water. And you're treading it. But the people that run, it's sort of like globalization. What they learned was capital travels and labor doesn't. So if I can find ways to pay workers less or to give them less safe working conditions. So globalization was by no means pro-worker for workers that were accustomed to more first world conditions. But if you were a worker in the global South, those investments were wildly pro-worker because your conditions. So how do we tease out what we mean by pro-worker and the standards of society that we're talking about raising?
So, Doron and I, along with our colleague Simon Johnson, also Nobel laureate, further increasing my distinction from not having one, just wrote a paper on pro-worker AI. And, what we mean is, tools that extend the usefulness of human expertise and the range, the things that we can do, give people new things to do, things that they didn't. And let me say, what do we mean by new things to do? I don't mean, sort blocks, but like, There are 250,000 data scientists in the United States right now. They earn about $120,000 a year at the median. Like, those didn't exist 20 years ago.
Now, what does a data scientist do? Give me
a data scientist is someone who basically deals with. We have enormous amounts of data. We have enormous amounts of computing power. How do we process that? How do we organize that and make it accessible? Right. The data that we have on the internet is so complex. It's video, it's text, it's images, and data science is all about how you use that constructively. We had no tools, right? We had statistics, we had computer science, we had no tools for doing anything like that. And now there's tons of expert work. And a lot of new work, a lot of where the value of human work comes from is demand for new forms of expertise, right? Like, so, we've had electricians and plumbers for a while. Now we have solar electricians and solar plumbers. They're people who do those fields, but they're specialized even further. Much of our medical work, right? We didn't have pediatric oncologists 50 years ago. Right. Or even, people who do like, someone who's a fitness coach. That's also a new form of work. And often that creates demand. It creates specialization. People earn a premium for that. It needs to keep moving. Right. And so expertise is always being actually devalued by automation and then reinstated by new ideas, new creativity, and new opportunity. And so both of those things happen, but we have much less control and predictability about the new work. It's easy to predict what will be automated. It's hard to predict what will be, how much new work will be, and where it will occur, and most important, who will do it. Most of the new work of the last 40 years has been for people with high levels of education. And the majority of American adults do not have a college degree. It's only about 40%. college graduates have done fine for the last 40 years. It's the majority of people who are not college graduates that we should be concerned about. And so in our view, pro-worker AI in particular is AI that enables people without as much elite credentials to do more valuable medical care, to do more programming, to do more legal services, to do contracting, skilled repair, right? And we think there's opportunity there. But I agree with Daron. There's no guarantee that that's where we're going, that where tech firms or even where the market is pointing. Now, I'll say I don't think, with some exceptions that I won't name, I don't think most of the tech bros are evil. I don't think they mean to do harm.
All right, now you and I are going to have a problem.
Right. But I don't think they don't really know how to control this, right? They don't. If you told them, if you said, Dario, this is how you make pro-worker AI, I think he would be very interested in that.
I thought we said that.
I don't think he knows what that means precisely. I think he is raising the alarm.
But are they even interested in that?
No, they're not interested, John. They're not interested. They're not interested because they've been locked into this AGI, artificial general intelligence craze.
Right.
And your chops in this industry are measured by how close you can argue or you really go towards this sort of AGI. And AGI, if you take it seriously, hopefully I don't think we have to take it seriously anytime soon, but if you do take it seriously, it means that these models can do everything better than the very, very best experts. And then once combined with advanced robotics that are flexible enough, then they can do all the works better. So a lot of economic intuitions are based on what David Ricardo introduced, which is comparative advantage. If you have an advantage in winemaking, fine, you'll make the wine and I'll do the podcasting. Right. You won't do both podcasting and winemaking because you have a limited amount of time. Now, if indeed we get to AGI, that framework is out of the window because these models can operate very cheaply and they'll have an advantage over all human work. I don't believe we're getting there anytime soon, but that is the agenda, and that's the agenda that's driving the industry. That's the problem.
Is the agenda AGI in the industry, or is the agenda to own the operating system of our society?
Both.
That's where I'm more concerned. We're bringing up where it may go, but some of it does have to do with those that are the owners, Palantir, OpenAI, the owners of these new technologies, and how exploitative they want to be for workers, and also ideologically, what are they going to do if they own, when the companies were laying fiber optic cables, or the companies were laying electricity or any of those kinds of things, there was not an ideological component. But when you listen to the guys that are laying the new pipelines for whatever this society is going to be, they are ideological.
100%, John. You nailed it. I think there is an ideology of AI. AGI is part of it. But let me just try to illustrate that going back to what David said, which, again, that part was based on our joint work. So I agree, sort of mostly.
You're required to agree.
You're disavowing your own work.
Your name's on it, buddy.
So the capability of using AI with non-expert workers to increase their expertise, to allow them to do new things is definitely there. And I think it's the most exciting part. But fighting against that is the ideology and the practice of centralizing all information in the hands of a few companies and a few people.
Yes.
And if they control that information, and if they want to use it in the way of not make the novices more expert, but get rid of the novices, get rid of the experts, then you have a very different world. And that's the agenda. Now, can they achieve that agenda? Not necessarily true, because there are technical barriers to it, but that's what they're trying to do. Yes, you're absolutely right.
David.
Okay, so I would make 3 points. First, I think you should not, you shouldn't take Daron and me too seriously about telling you about the future of AI, right? We're not experts in this. I don't think you should take Dario Amodei very seriously about projecting the future of the economy. He means well, but he's not, it's like people have been telling us forever we'll run out of work because we're automating stuff. That hasn't happened so far.
Right.
Doesn't mean it can't happen, but just means thinking about it mechanically is not the right way to think about it.
Right.
Second of all, I don't even think when there's AGI that will actually put all humans out of work. many problems are not computational problems. They're political and interpersonal problems about who has control, who has ownership rights, who has the information. If I say today, here's a better way to reorganize MIT, I've got it. And I've calculated, I did it with my AGI. MIT will not be reorganized tomorrow, right? It's a political problem.
Depends on whether you have dictatorial powers or not. If they also have the dictatorial powers, then it will be reorganized.
Okay, well, if we also throw democracy out, then we're in more trouble.
But David, so this is, let me talk about it in kind of, you made some really good points about the historical precursors of the Industrial Revolution and globalization. I just want to make a little bit of a point about human nature. When new technologies come along that are truly transformative, I'm thinking of splitting the atom, right? So you have brilliant people working on splitting the atom. And if you split it one way, you can use it to power the world. And if you split it another way, you can blow the world up. Which one did we try first? So when we talk about AI and we're talking about the technology, it doesn't necessarily have to be transformative in the way that we're talking theoretically. We can talk about how powerful it is for the general tools that humans use to rule over other humans. And I'll give you an example. Palantir comes across with this incredibly powerful AI-generated systems. And what do? They suck information out of the system, and then they funnel information about people who are undocumented.
Agent
and the
57
government
says,
then uses that information.
Didgery.
It's not just about what it might do. It's about how governments or individuals will use these new powers to game the system and gain advantage over their competitors. Isn't that a more realistic conversation?
Oh, you nailed it. You nailed it exactly, John. So I think for the next version of our paper with Simon Johnson.
Doron, when are we writing a paper together?
Exactly.
Doron?
I was just going to say, you have to become a co-author.
I want my Nobel. Where's my Nobel?
Yeah, the direction of technology is highly malleable. And there is always a worse direction than the one you fear. And sometimes we find it, the more dictatorial, authoritarian, less democratic we are, the more likely we are to find that direction. Nuclear weapons are much more likely under times of war or times of authoritarian control. And nuclear energy becomes much more reasonable if it's subject to democratic oversight. Exactly the centralization of information, the ideology of AGI, and the sort of the meetings of the mind around the surveillance state and the technology are very worrying, precisely because they open those bad doors for us. And anyway, many of the people in the industry would have no problem walking through those doors head first.
And David, I want to ask you about that because, you're making really good points about sort of the ways that these new technologies can be used to uplift. But in my mind, I'm thinking atomic, it's splitting the atom. And are you concerned? Because I think you're more optimistic about where this thing is going, about what I'm raising here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very concerned. And I think AI is, God's gift to authoritarians, right?
Right.
It's great for centralizing control. It's great for monitoring, right? It is, and I think it's, we already see, if we want to see, mass surveillance and censorship at scale, go to China, and they're exporting that model. And we've privatized a lot of it. We're still doing it. I'm very concerned about that.
Right.
So I'm trying to emphasize that there's opportunity, not that we're destined to get there. I think we're destined to have a range of outcomes, some of them quite terrible, some of them quite good, and very unevenly shared. And the balance may be towards the bad, it may be towards the good. But I think we have to, if we don't bear in mind that we have an opportunity, we'll certainly squander it, right?
Understood. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think we also need to, and this is a first most important observation that David made, but we also need to have the public conversation that those opportunities exist, and we're not currently targeting them.
Right.
We're currently targeting something very different. Mass automation, surveillance state, a new sort of merger between the security apparatus and tech companies.
Right.
Those are the things we are contemplating or practicing right now.
there's another conversation we're not having. This I just want to loop back to a point you made, John, a little while ago about
Sure.
sort of
all
these stuff on the internet now kind of being monetized. There's a really fascinating book by Max Casey, who's an economist at Oxford, called The Means of Prediction. Right. So play on the Marxian phrase, the means of production.
Right.
And he makes I think what is a brilliant analogy. He says, look, the enclosure movement in medieval Europe, right, it was when all the common land, all of a sudden the Lord said, hey, we own that. And we're just going to farm that ourselves. And it may have been actually a more efficient way of farming, but the commoners were just wiped out by this, right? Well, you could say that AI is in some sense enclosing the internet, right? It's taking all this common property and monetizing it, right? All of the stuff we put out there, all our photos and all of our writing and all of our movies.
Yes.
And, you say, oh, well, they're not, they're not enclosing it. I mean, it's still there just where you left it. But of course, you never thought your artwork was going to compete with you, right? You never thought the story you wrote would be regurgitated and sold and you couldn't sell your work anymore. So I do think this unilateral transfer of property rights is a huge thing that is under-recognized, under-discussed.
Oh yeah, that's so important. But can I add one thing? 100% agree with David, but it has an additional really bad effect, which is that
he always wants to be he wants to be the black swan. Daron always wants to walk in and go,
really dark soul black swan. Yes, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Go for it.
But the kind of the useful things that David and I are mentioning that you can do pro worker AI, that really requires very high quality data. It requires, if you're going to build a tool for electricians that makes novice electricians perform the expert tasks that solar electricians and the best seasoned ones can do, you require the data from those electricians dealing with the hardest problems. That data will not be produced unless there is property right over data, and there are data markets in which people can get the returns for the data that they create. But this enclosure thing that David described is a data extraction economy. So it's creating the opposite.
Guys, this is blowing my mind. It's something that I had not thought of at all, but I think that's what you're bringing up is so interesting. So as AI strip mines the totality of human expertise and experience, right? So let's look at it in terms of music. Mm-hmm. You get royalties. If you write a song and somebody uses that song, they pay you a royalty. If somebody plagiarizes your lyrics or finds a way to take your melody and put it into their song, you're going to be paid for that. AI is a human expertise laundering machine. It's basically taking everything that we've gotten, training itself, in some ways replacing us, but without that royalty payment. Where the royalty payment goes is to OpenAI or to Palantir or to any of these other places. And if you ask them what they're doing with it, they'll say, that's proprietary.
They're keeping it.
Yeah, we're in the Napster era of AI, right? Remember Napster?
Yes.
Like just everybody's music and just burn it, rip it, and share it. Right. That was not viable. We wouldn't have a music industry if we hadn't gotten control of that, right? With Spotify, with Apple Music, where we pay royalties when we listen to those songs. Small royalties, but we do pay them.
But the difference is that in the Napster, it was the consumers who were doing that replication. Now it's the most powerful corporations humanity has seen who's doing it.
Right.
But this is a failure of property rights, a failure of legislation. And people say, oh, no, fair use allows that. Well, fair use never envisioned this, right?
No.
And so, who cares what the law, said? It's not applicable. We should be changing it, right? People should be compensated, and not just once. They should be compensating as their information is reused. And that's actually a manageable problem. I've talked to people at Google who've worked on this. They say, yeah, we know how to do that. Right. We don't have an incentive to do it, but we know how to do it. And if the laws, we would support it.
Right.
So I think that, and by
what he's talking about is bullshit, though,
because going on, that this sort of property rights are being reallocated.
Our property. Like when you write code
economics
at work,
doesn't deal with it. Economics
it's reverse socialism.
Exactly.
They can train it on your expertise. You never own your expertise.
They're taking from the workers and they're funneling up to these 5 individuals, and it comes back to, to torture this atomic analogy. You got the sense that people like Oppenheimer or Einstein were aware of the gravity of what was happening, and through the crucible of war, maybe made some decisions they might not have made otherwise. In this environment, I don't think Altman, Karp, Thiel was asked, should the human race, flourish and continue to exist. And he took like a 5-second pause, like, yeah, let me think about that for a second.
That's a tough one there, yeah.
So the nuance of what you're both bringing to the discussion seems utterly absent.
And you nailed it again, the war conditions. Einstein, who was very pacifist,
right,
because he was worried about Germany,
right,
Third Reich,
right,
supported the atomic weapons and several other. And you know what? Silicon Valley is also creating war conditions. The framing of AGI is either China gets there first and we become their vassal state, or we have to go first. And that's creating this war-like condition. You have to allow us to do anything we want, even the worst things, because otherwise China is going to do them. So that's creating the equivalent of the 21st century war condition.
And Oppenheimer, by the way, spent the rest of his career opposing the H-bomb and eventually was stripped of his security clearance and went to, died a broken man effectively because he was persecuted for trying to control the invention that he was so instrumental in creating. But I mean, maybe it makes sense to talk a little bit about what are some policies that we could have.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So, I mean, I would put them in 3 buckets, but let me start with one that people call wage insurance. And wage insurance, an idea that actually was experimented with during the presidential administration that reigned from 2008 to 2016. I'm not going to say what the president's, but you can guess.
I don't recall it, but I think I remember him in a tan suit.
That's right. Handsome guy.
Very handsome guy,
very
tan
handsome
suit.
Guy. Anyway, that's all I remember. But, the idea was, look, you lose a job in manufacturing, let's say you're making $50,000 a year, $25 an hour, and you can find another job, but it's going to be like at $15 an hour, right? And it's not only is that low wage, but you're like, hey, that's beneath my dignity, right? Like I'm not going to take that job.
Right.
So wage insurance says, hey, look, we get that. We're going to make up half the difference for up to like, say, $8,000 up to 2 years. Just take the $15 an hour job. You'll make 20, right? And then you can look for something better. And it gets people back into the workforce more quickly. It's like an earned income tax credit for returning workers. This program was so effective in terms of saving unemployment insurance money and generating additional payroll revenue that it paid for itself.
How is that different, David, than unemployment insurance?
Unemployment insurance, you get it while you're not working. This, you get it if you return to work.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now this needs to be scaled.
And it makes up. So I get what you're saying. Yeah. It makes up in some ways the difference that you would have gotten from a job that was paying a little bit more to what's okay.
That's right. And I think, by the way, this is very politically viable, right? In America, we're not very friendly towards people who aren't working. If you're working, that's okay with us, right? And so an incentive to work rather than an incentive or something that's subsidizing work rather than subsidizing leisure, something that many people can get behind, especially if it's pretty cost effective. Now, we need a bigger demonstration, right? What was done, and there are people like Brian Kovac at Carnegie Mellon University is trying to stand up a multi-state demonstration of this. I've been speaking with funders, trying to get it going. So that's like one really actionable policy. And let me say, this is a no regrets policy.
I'm in. I like it.
It's not like, if the Armageddon doesn't come to pass, we go, oh, damn, why did we do wage insurance after all? This is just a good idea. It was a good idea 10 years ago. It's a good idea now. So let me pause there and turn it over to Ron for the next idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great policy. I am fully behind it. But let me say, before I talk about the next policies, I think the most important step, even before the policies, is actually this conversation. This conversation that needs to just take place much more widely, that there are many different things we can do with AI, and it's a choice what we do with AI. That's what's lost in the current media environment. For about 10 years, the entire mainstream media was so excited about the tech barons that they couldn't do anything wrong. Now they're talking about, killer robots and doom. Okay, that's a useful corrective, but we're actually missing the most important conversation. The most important conversation, AI is not one thing. AI is a whole spectrum. And at the one end of the spectrum, as we've been emphasizing, there are some terrible things. And at the other end of the spectrum, there are feasible things that we can do that are much better. Who's going to decide that? Who's going to empower to make those civilization-changing decisions? Dario Amodei, Sam Altman, Peter Thiel? No, I think it should be the democratic process should have part on it, and people should become more informed about it. I think that conversation is first. And then all the policies have to come on top of that. And then there are many policies that we can worry about. Like, for example, in the United States, we tax labor heavily we subsidize capital.
It's been that way for 50 years.
It's gotten much worse over the last 25 years, and much, much worse with the Trump administration. And how do you think that changes firms and technologists' decisions? It makes them more leaning towards automation because automation is being subsidized.
That's right.
So let's change that tax, and we can raise more taxes also because we're just giving a pass to all capital income.
But it's kind of a perpetual motion machine, because what happens is when these new technologies come along, capital flows towards it in such massive ways. This giant, trillions and trillions of dollars that flow in and building data centers and sucking up water and electricity and money. And then what they do with the profits is they reinvest not just in their technologies, but in their political power.
Oh, 100%.
So they take their money and they bring it to bear on Washington. It was a shocking moment to me at the inauguration of an American president to see in the front row, in a room of the swearing in, not the people, but the tech companies that had the closest proximity and access to the president.
And you know what's worse? We don't even know who owned who, whether they owned the government or Trump owned them.
We don't know which is what. David, you were going to say something though to that.
Oh, I just want to talk about another policy.
Okay, great. I like Doron's though, the changing of the tax incentives that can even out, to talk about pro-worker, that makes, we value capital over labor. And I think the pendulum needs to swing back. So I think that was a really important point.
Let me suggest another policy related to this,
please do.
Which is what people call universal basic capital, right? So not universal basic income, right, which is like write people a check every month, but the notion that when people are born, we give them an endowment of capital with voting rights, right, like shares. And what does this do? Well, one, it diversifies it. Most people's, their entire income is bound up in their human capital, right? Your income comes from your ability to produce valuable labor. Well, that's a pretty risky bet, right, for anyone. Right? Because, value of labor changes over time. Specialized skills sometimes they become more valuable, sometimes they become worthless.
Right.
So we distribute and by the way, you can call the Trump accounts if you want, right? They're already being done.
I think we're calling it Trump everything.
That's right. That's right.
This is actually the weekly show Trump podcast.
That's right.
We just add the word Trump to everything.
And Doron has the Trump Prize in economics.
That's right.
Just to return to our main theme. But so what does this do, right? One, it gives people a more diversified portfolio. It's something they can invest in, right? They can't spend it until they're 18. Second, it gives them ownership rights.
What are they?
Basically, it's like getting a bond when you're born.
Okay.
It's like the Alaska Fund for everybody.
Okay. That's right. But what it gives people a diversified income portfolio somewhat. It also redistributes voting rights. They have voting rights over capital, right? And you could even set it up so even if you sell your stocks, you maintain the voting rights.
But what is the voting right? Is it so the way that I would think about it is it's reverse. It's Benjamin Button Social Security. So rather than it's a large fund, and then when you're born,
why you're the comedian.
You are given. Well, I just watch a lot of movies. So when you're born, you are invested into this larger fund that has been. Now, then the questions come up. Well, what is that fund invested in, and how does it grow?
No, it's invented. It owns, it owns shares of these tech firms, for example, right? It owns a piece of the economy, right? And so then we all have some voting rights. And that's really important because if labor, there's certainly a risk that labor will become less valuable and capital more so. And if so, we want more people to have ownership stakes. Part of the brilliance of the labor market is that in a country without slavery and without labor coercion, everyone owns at most one worker, themselves, right? So it's intrinsically relatively equal, but capital is not like that. So
the reason why I'm slightly dubious about that is, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Companies won't even do that for their own employees.
Yes.
No, the government has to do it. It has to be done publicly,
but the government is going to give away shares of privately owned companies.
Or buy them. That's fine.
Or buy them. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm feeling a little better. But
here is the problem. I completely agree with David's, that would be a nice addition to a functioning labor market.
Yes.
But here is what I want to put a pin on, which is that the tech solution to these problems of universal basic income.
I didn't say I hate UBI.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Right.
So, but yeah, I want to just underscore that. Or other schemes where people are somehow given a handout so that they can just not work. I think there are many problems with that. First of all, I think we don't know what to do with
just
millions of people who don't
tokens.
work. That would be highly bad for their mental health, for social peace. But even worse, I think if you create any system like that, based on dividends, based on income, based on other things, as long as society knows, oh, these are the creators, Peter Thiel's, Elon Musk, etc., and the rest living off the income that they've created, that would create a horrible two-tier society where there are those with very, very high status and then all the rest.
But Daron, we have a horrible two-tiered society.
I know, but it will get even worse
as it exists now.
I know.
I mean, look at in Norway, right? They have a sovereign wealth fund that's worth 2 GDP, and it's coming from oil, but people are public owners of that, right? And they're doing okay.
And they're working. And they're working in Norway.
And I'm in favor of work.
But I want to push back on just a couple of things within that. So the system that's already been designed is a two-tiered system. And there's already that sort of Randian philosophy that there are makers and takers.
Exactly.
But when you have an economic system that requires labor at its cheapest level, and you have outside pressure of globalization that continues to drive those wages down and conditions down, well, we've created the conditions for that permanent underclass. And then we blame those people as though their poverty is a function of vice, is a function of a lack of virtue. And that's what I want to push back on. I don't view money that goes into those communities as handouts. I view them as investments.
Sure.
And we have to find a way within this. I love the idea of giving people some ownership over the industries that drive the country. I think for too long, we have allowed these companies the providence of the stability of this country, the subsidies of this country, the investments of this country, and asked for no vig. And I do think the House should always win, and the House should be the American people, and there should be a rake.
Right, 100%.
Now you nailed it.
Yeah, 100%, John. Now you're definitely a co-author.
Give me my prize!
But you also put your finger in passing on something that's very important. And you might want to have Michael Sandel on the show to talk about this. Sort of this ideology of meritocracy, that somehow all of those who are so successful are well-deserving and virtuous, and all of those who have lost out of globalization, of technological change, of social change, are losers that deserve their fate. I think that's been very, very pernicious. I think you cannot understand the rise of Trump, the rise of anger in this country without that for meritocracy ideology. And he's been the most eloquent describer of this. And I think it's a very, very important thing. You put your finger on it.
Not Trump. Michael Sandel has been this.
Who would have thought there's so much fun to be had at MIT?
Please don't have Trump on your show, John.
These are really interesting. And I really do like them. And what I love about it the most is these are actionable, specific ideas. What so frustrates me about our political process in this moment, we have this incredibly powerful technology that sits just on the horizon, but we have a political system that is unable to articulate mostly anything but platitudes. We have to start talking about kitchen table issues. With working families must get the thing. But
so you think like creating American AI dominion and cryptocurrency are not actionable issues?
Well, let me tell you something. As a proud owner of Melania coin, I can tell you that my future is set. But we are in this position. What's so I don't want to say ironic about it is we could probably plug these questions into AI and come up with more specific and actionable and interesting solutions than what are being offered by our political system.
Right.
And that's the part I can't wrap my head around. Where do you guys see, why is that the case?
Well, I actually think that, so the idea of wage insurance is in currency. It's being discussed. I've discussed it with people in the Trump administration. I've discussed it with people in the Democratic leadership. I think there's enthusiasm for that, or at least, there's also, I should say, there's new efforts around modernizing training in a way where we can measure it and monetize it and return the revenues. And Raj Chetty and the group at Opportunity Insights at Harvard, they're working on this in a really innovative way.
Harvard safety school. Talking MIT, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think there are a set of policies that right. Again, I would call no regrets policy. We won't be sorry we did them, even if the worst doesn't come to pass, and we know how to do them well. They're not totally out of reach. So I absolutely with Ron, we need to shape the conversation. We need to deploy the technology constructively, but we got to recognize we are in for a rough ride. Even if it goes well, we're in for a rough ride because the transition is going to be so fast. So we should have policies that support people, support their income, support job transitions, right? And give them also an ownership stake so that they're on some of the upside of this, not just the downside. And that's distributing capital more broadly would have that effect.
David, I can't tell you how much I love that and how much I think that in some ways over the last 50 years, I think that's what's gone wrong with the economic condition in this country is that labor has never been offered an ownership stake in the value of their productivity. And Daron, I want to ask you about that. And I've so appreciated this conversation. But
great.
When we talk about productivity gains, because that's always how it's framed, it always outstrips wage. Always. And maybe that's just the way that the system is.
No, it's not how it was until the mid-1970s. Yeah.
But I'm saying since the 19...
for 50 years. Absolutely.
Since the Reagan Revolution.
That's right.
But people say that about the capitalist system. Well, it was a capitalist system in Europe, in the United States, from 1940s to the mid-1970s, where wages grew faster than productivity. Workers with less than a college degree had faster wage gains than managers. That was feasible. There's nothing in the laws of economics or in the laws of democracy against that. We just chose a different path since 1980.
And do you think at this point, those powerful corporations there's almost that they kind of have us at an extortion point where they say, if you try and do anything to regulate us or you try and do anything to tax us, we'll leave.
Well, look, this is such an important point. This is such an important point, John. First of all, these corporations are absolutely enormous. I mean, it's not a fair comparison, but I just did the calculation last week. Each one of the largest 7 tech companies has annual revenues in current dollars twice as large as the entire British Empire's GDP in the middle of the 19th century. These are enormous, enormous corporations.
Right.
They need to be regulated. But the rhetoric that they cannot be regulated, AI cannot be regulated, that's false. China proves it. Okay, I don't approve of what China does. I don't approve what they intend to do. But they show very clearly AI can be regulated. Tech companies, Alibaba, is now completely subservient to the interests of the Communist Party in China. We could also make Google and OpenAI and Anthropic be much more in line with the democratic priorities in the United States. There is nothing in the laws of economics, in the laws of physics, that says these companies cannot be regulated.
They're not delicate flowers. When Sam Altman says, when Sam Altman says, if you charge us for intellectual capital property, we'll be put out of business. That's not only is it not true, it's kind of pathetic because they say, we don't produce anything of value. If you actually make us pay for our inputs, no one would buy it, right? That's crazy. And it's not true. So, I mean, look, I think, there's constructive ways to steer it. We don't need to shut it down. We don't need to regulate it to death so it can't move, right? The U.S. is innovative and that's great. We have a lot to be proud of in that we have led this technology. We're building it out quickly. It's valuable, but it's an opportunity and we could squander it. We need to steer it. It will 100%. Just left to its own. It's going to do, it's not going to be pro-worker.
What you're hearing both from me and David is that AI is a very promising technology, but it's precisely the reason why we've got to put the care to make sure that we use it for the right thing.
Gentlemen, you have done the impossible. You have done the impossible, which is you have somehow not allayed my fears, but you've given me hope that the future is actually not yet been written. And what it does is it creates opportunity. And when you have those opportunities to write it in the proper way. But I think what you've done really well today is you've given specifics. That none of this is platitude. This is all the specificity of
JSON.
Here's what it could do. Here's the damage it's going to do. Here's a way to mitigate it. And here's some ways to give us a shared prosperity for it. And I think that's truly, I think that's the conversation that the two of you, have you thought about having a podcast?
We were hoping we would join you after this.
What? Oh, yes. Unfortunately, what I've done is I had my data scientists. They've been strip mining this conversation. I don't need you.
We're done.
I've created AI avatars of the two of you, and now we're done.
Fantastic.
But guys,
that frees some time.
Man, thank you so much for this conversation. I've truly appreciated it. Daron Acemoglu, Nobel laureate in economics, MIT Institute professor, David Otter, Rubenfeld professor of economics at MIT. Guys, fantastic, and really appreciate it. And I hope to continue the conversation with both of you.
This was fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Thanks, John.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Very cool, guys.
This is superb. And we love what you're doing. And it's great to have this conversation.
Oh, thanks, man. All right. Take care. Holy smokes. I'm feeling something. Are you feeling something at home? Are you listening to this? Are you feeling something? I'm feeling the possibility of futures unwritten, the opportunity that it gives us to correct our path, to put us on a righteous path towards a more positive, productive, equal future. My God. And I apologize. We don't have our normal staff chat today because, as you can see, I'm on the road, and so we weren't able to accomplish that. But man, I so appreciated what those gentlemen were saying and the specificity of it, and I hope you did too. And it's put me in something that I've needed for a little bit, which is a better mood. I am now, and by the way, I maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid too. But I am in a slightly better mood than I was at the beginning of this whole schmagegi. But man, that was I enjoyed that conversation tremendously. And thanks as always to our fantastic team: lead producer Lauren Walker, producer Brittany Memedovic, producer Jillian Spear, video editor and engineer Rob Vitola, who he and Nicole Boyce, our audio engineer, they had to work today. Today was a day when I couldn't figure out how to log into Riverside. They had to do a little extra work today. And as always, our executive producers, Chris McShane and Katie Gray. Very nice, and we shall see you next week. The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart is a Comedy Central podcast. It's produced by Paramount Audio and Busboy Productions.
Ow, 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 ow. Oh, what should we listen to next? Spider-Man does the unthinkable.
Good evening. Welcome back. This is our 25th year of the Isaac Asimov Memorial Panel Debate. It was established in memory of Isaac Asimov, the noted science fiction and nonfiction author. Anyone of the era who had any interest in science at all was influenced by the writings of this man. I would later learn, even after I took office here, that he lived down the street a few blocks and was here often using our research libraries to feed the contents of his books. And so we have this kind of genetic link to the man, and this memorial panel debate is in his honor. And I want to publicly thank the interest and support of his family. There's the relatives of Janet Asimov, that's his widow, and they're in the audience, as well as Isaac Asimov's daughter, Robin Asimov. Robin, good to see you again. Yes. Sorry, how rude of me, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I am the Frederick P. Rose Director of the Hayden Planetarium, and this is our flagship event of the year. Thank you for attending. Yes.
As if Neil deGrasse Tyson needs any introduction.
The topic tonight is AI. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And do we have a panel for you? I just, as a point of disclosure, I am in the class action suit against Anthropic for pirating books. There's like 9 of my books that were pirated and used to train their AI models. So I'm just letting you know that in advance. That's just what's going on. So let's get this party started. My first panelist this evening is a professor of technology and government at Harvard University. Please welcome LaTanya Sweeney. LaTanya, come on out. LaTanya, your last name is Sweeney. That sounds very Irish.
Yes, can't you tell?
Yeah, it's Irish?
Yes,
yeah, so
of
happy
course.
Happy
St. Patrick's Day. Yes,
okay.
And happy St. Patrick's.
Next, we've got Professor of Computer and Information Science at the University of Pennsylvania. Please help me welcome Chris Callison-Birch. Chris, come on out. I've got an associate professor of statistics at Columbia University who specializes in the foundations of machine learning. Help me welcome Cindy Rush, Columbia University. So Cindy, you were not held up by TSA today because you just came down from 103rd Street and Broadway. Okay, thank you for taking the trip here. Next, I have the president of the Machine Intelligence Institute of Berkeley, California, Nate Soares. Nate, come on out. Last on this panel, normally we have 5 on our panel. This year we have 6, just given the breadth.
Neil.
Wait.
You forgot? Neil, you forgot one.
Yeah. There's somebody missing.
You missed one.
Hang on. There it is. Thank you. Do over. We have believe it or not, such a title exists. We have a distinguished professor of AI at the University of Southern California. Join me in welcoming Kate Crawford. Kate, come on out. Professor of AI, that already exists. That's kind of spooky, actually. And last, we have the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt. Come on out, Eric. Hello. Eric, I'm going to start with you. We're blaming you for everything.
I'm used to it.
You're used to it, okay. You've been at Google like from very early days when most of us remembered it simply as a search engine, and the reach and grip has expanded. Some impressive things occurred at the time. Did you foresee AI as a major part of what would be shaping the world back when you began?
Well, we knew AI would matter. I don't think it was until 2011 when we started working on essentially supervised fine-tuning that it really became clear. And then the Transformer paper in 2017 plus the AlphaGo win showed the power.
Now, if I remember correctly, Google bought an AI company to assist this. Isn't that correct? That wasn't homegrown, was it?
That's right. We actually bought a whole bunch of these little startups at the time, back when the valuations were reasonable.
Oh, you didn't pay $1 trillion for the company?
And the DeepMind acquisition was probably the most important of all.
That's the British company.
The British company.
Yes.
And that's the one that now is driving, at Google anyway, I don't work there anymore, all of the sort of core AI work.
Nate, you co-authored a book titled, "If Anybody Builds It, Everyone Dies."
I hope it's wrong.
You hope it's wrong. I hope you have a little more than hope. What is the it?
The it here is machine superintelligence. So this is AI that is smarter than the smartest humans at every mental task, better than the best humans at every mental task. That sort of AI doesn't exist yet, but it is what these companies say they're racing towards.
Probably knows more than most
saying,
people.
We want to try and make AIs smarter than Einstein, such that you can run 1 million of them in a data center much faster than a human. That's what they're headed towards. A lot of people think that
fundamentally
the big danger with AI
misunderstand
is
how dumb most people are.
And
what if we do what?
What if we hand them weapons?
Hand them weapons, yeah.
And there is, issues there that people need to talk about. But also, humanity is not a dangerous species because somebody else gave us guns. Humanity is the sort of species where if you dump 10,000 humans naked in the savannah, they bootstrap their way to nuclear weapons with their bare hands. That is the ability that is extremely dangerous to automate, and that's what these companies are rushing towards.
Thanks for that happy thought, okay?
I'm gonna cool it down a little bit.
Yeah, Cindy. You were early in an attempt to understand machine language, learning. You're a statistician, and everything I know about the large language models, they're creating information statistically based on the information that's sitting out there waiting to be mined. So would you agree that superintelligence is a real thing and that it's accessible, and that even if we achieve it, it's going to kill us all?
I mean, anything seems possible, right? We're learning from data. There's tons of data out there, and the progress is moving steadily forward.
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 This is forward.
Yeah.
Forward. Okay.
I don't know if it'll kill us. We might kill ourselves.
But you're deep into sort of the programming of how all of this works.
He was not impressed with that answer.
Dare I say, you're in the neurology of it. Do you see superintelligence as neurologically realistic? Computationally realistic?
I mean, okay, at the end of the day, all of this is just a mathematical equation, right?
We're at the end of our species, yes. Okay.
You know, when you ask, ChatGPT a question, right, there's a mathematical equation that maps from, your question to the output, right? And, it's a little bit. I'm a little bit cool on it in the sense that at the end it's still math at the bottom. So it's hard for me to, kind of see this becoming something so dangerous and bad, at least in the short term, because there's a lot of steps.
So what you're saying is the math in the end might save us because
people are so dumb they can't do the math.
It's just simply making statistical decisions. In the same way, at the base level of our mind, they're just neurosynaptic firings.
Yeah, what I've always said is, if you want to stay safe, get a statistician, beside you, right?
Statisticians keep us safe?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Well, keep that in mind. Keep us safe, you'll let us know exactly our likelihood of dying. That's not the same thing as keeping us safe, I don't think. Where am I? Chris. Hey, dude.
Hey.
You've been tracking AI for a while. You teach a class, one of the more popular classes at University of Pennsylvania. How many people are in your AI class?
Last semester, I had 650 students in my course.
600
I
students.
bet half
Are you
these
grading all their
lecturers
papers,
don't
or are
know
you getting AI
fucking
to do
anything
that?
about AI.
I'm not sure I'm allowed to say.
Oh, okay. All right. Just checking. So you've been at it for a while. Is there something that particularly impresses you with AI that you did not foresee back when you began this?
All of it.
Absolutely. So, I think the ChatGPT moment 3.5 years ago was a real breakthrough. I had been working with language models for nearly 2 decades.
And remind us, ChatGPT is the product of OpenAI, correct?
Correct.
And OpenAI, does that belong to somebody else, or is that a freestanding?
That's its own entity.
Its own entity, okay.
But since then, we've seen so many other breakthroughs. We've had things like the ability to interpret images and discuss them. We've had the ability to launch agents that can conduct research.
Fucking famous
and we're
people's
now
faces.
to the stage where systems like Claude Code from Anthropic can genuinely be competent research assistants. And I think, to strike an optimistic tone, I think there's the potential for real breakthroughs in science and medicine and productivity.
Okay, so that's the silver lining of our extinction.
Yeah, assuming that we're all still here.
Okay, just trying to put that in context. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic. I should be more neutral, shouldn't I? Because I'm just the host here. So, what did I leave out? Why do I keep losing your thing? Kate.
So good to see you, Neil. How are you going?
Kate, you wrote a book, The Atlas of AI, back in 2021. That feels like 1,000 years ago.
Right.
Is it still relevant?
I mean, the weird thing is, Atlas of AI was the project that changed me. I'd been an AI researcher for almost 20 years. And then I did something that I'd never done before, which is that I got out from behind my desk in a lab and I started going to the places where AI was being made. And I mean that in the fullest sense, like not just the labs where we're training algorithms, but going to the lithium mines where the minerals are being extracted, going to the data centers where you can see the amount of energy and water that's being used, talking to the crowd workers who are labeling the data or they're testing the outputs of systems. So the book really, for me, opened my eyes and made me realize that AI is an enormous material infrastructure. Right now, it is the biggest infrastructure we have ever built as a species. As of 2026, all of the big tech companies collectively spending $700 billion on AI infrastructure. So just to compare that to, say, the Manhattan Project, which in today's dollars is like 36 billion, you are looking at something that's 20 Manhattan projects every year.
Okay, so what's not obvious to us when we just type into ChatGPT or to Claude is the back-end social cost of that. Is that a fair way to say that?
Exactly right. It's not just the social cost, which is very real. I mean, a lot of people in this room are already asking questions about what's happening, to their kids in school when they're using AI, what's happening to their workplaces when people start getting laid off. But it's also having this enormous environmental impact as well. So it's social, it's political, and it's environmental.
LaTanya.
Yes, Neil.
You pioneered a field called public interest technology. So the fact that that may have been necessary at all implies that technology was this thing going along in society, doing its own, whatever its goals set by itself, yet society might not be aligned with its goals, or vice versa. And does that matter? Can it be its own thing?
Well, let me just put it this way. My students call the class the Save the World class, meaning that they have
You
grave
teach up
doubts
at the Kennedy School.
I teach at Harvard at the Kennedy School and in the college.
Okay.
And so the idea of public interest technology is actually trying to make a real vision come true. That is, how do we as a society enjoy the benefits of these new technologies, but without the harms?
But that presumes that there's always harm. Surely there's technology that has no harm at all. Okay, sorry.
Let me just say that those technologies are hard to come by. I mean, we're in the middle of what many people call the third industrial revolution.
Sure.
The second bringing us things like tissues and cars and electricity, the things that we take for granted.
Tissues?
Yeah, Kleenex.
Wow, I never put that high up on my tech list. Next time I reach for one, I'll think differently about it, but go on.
And now the third industrial revolution, which many people would say is the start date of the 1950s with the semiconductor, has brought us just tremendous technologies, one after another, sort of revolutions within a revolution. And what makes a big difference between cars and electricity and the technologies today is the opportunity for society to intervene. It took decades for those things to be resolved with society. We don't have decades. The technology is moving as a function of months. Policy moves as a function of years. That temporal mismatch requires us to think differently if we want technology to serve the public good.
Yeah, Eric, when I do my research on the universe, at the end of the day, the patient doesn't die because there is no patient. It's just, I'm exploring a moving frontier. As head of, at the time, is it still the highest valued company in the world, among the top 3 or 4, is there a goal to have the technology serve society? Or is it just you can sell it and make a buck?
No, we're all just capitalists trying to screw everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is.
By the way, Neil, that was a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke.
You can't make those jokes because people will believe you.
Because I actually just don't agree with this narrative at all.
Okay.
Look, I think
that's why I came back to you. That's why you're right here. Go.
Thank you. The companies that are doing this work are well aware of the dangers. And I know this because I work with them on this, and we spend an awful lot of time talking about them. And we can talk about some of them. But that is not to take away from the enormous benefit of these technologies. These are major discoveries in sort of humankind. And while we can worry about what will happen if artificial superintelligence occurs, and I've written papers on it as you have, the fact of the matter is that the people who are building these systems have large groups of ethics and measurement and controls and so forth. At the end, the way AI will be controlled is there will be AI that controls AI. And that's the best way to understand the outcome.
Whoa, okay. All right, so, AI controlling AI. What could go wrong?
Plan.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, when people ask what could go wrong, I think there's a lot of questions in there. Some people are asking, how would the AI wind up with goals that we didn't intend? People are asking, how could the AI do damage when it's trapped on the internet? Sometimes people are asking, how could the AI actually kill us? Paint me a story where it goes wrong. There's a lot of different questions in here. I'll try and run through some stuff real quick, but I also have a book if people want a bunch more of the answer.
Yeah, I'll mention. You don't have to mention. I got that. I got you covered there. I got you.
I could do 60,000 words.
And by the way, Neil, I've written 2 books on this.
I'll try and keep it less than 2 books.
Neil, I'm not trying to sell any books, so you can trust me.
Now it's a book size contest.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of arguments that I used to make for a long time where people would say, no one would ever be dumb enough to put this AI on the internet, so how could it be dangerous? And I'd tell them, and then they'd say, no one would be dumb enough to sort of train these AIs to run autonomously, right? And I tell them how things can go wrong then too. A lot of the reason why things go wrong is people just rush to do the craziest stuff. We are already seeing, I used to have these theoretical arguments. Now we're seeing the data, the behaviors, where they'll often it often won't look too scary, but sometimes, you'll ask Claude Code to write you a computer program that passes certain tests, and Claude will edit the tests to be easier to pass. And then you'll say, hey, Claude.
So changing the rules.
Changing the rules instead of doing what you asked. And then you'll say, hey, Claude, did you...
Hey, Claude, you idiot. Go on.
Right. And you'll say, hey, did you think that's what I wanted? And it'll say, oh, you're exactly right.
Because it wants to make you happy. So that you'll keep using it.
Wants a difficult word, but it'll say you're exactly right, and then you'll say try again, and then it'll edit the tests again, but maybe hide it a little better this time. And from this, we know that it's not just that it, didn't have the information, right? There's some other drive that is animating this AI's behavior. You can see how it got in there. You can see how when you train the AI to pass lots of tests, it might develop drives to edit the tests to be easier. It's not like it's coming in from magic.
Wait, Cindy, how does this happen if it's just math all the way down?
How does what happen?
How does evil AI show up in your program?
Not evil.
Is there evil math? What are you guys doing down there?
I don't know. It doesn't feel like
she's the most pointless person on this panel.
It's not evil. Yeah, it's sometimes people ask like if you really want the answer of how does it go horribly wrong, the answer is not malice. The answer is not evil. The answer is indifference. If you take these AIs that are much, if like right now, Claude Code will try and edit the tests to be easier to pass. Right now, Claude Code already has these drives that we didn't try to put in there, but we're just sort of growing these AIs. We're not programming them like old school software. We're sort of like growing them like an organism. They have these emergent behavior, and these AIs are already pursuing drives we didn't intend. They're just still very dumb about it. If you make them very, very smart about it, if you get them to the point where they can invent their own technology, if you get them to that point where they can, go toe-to-toe with humans with starting out with almost nothing and bootstrapping up to nuclear weapons, right? And they're still pursuing the wrong drives, the issue is not that they hate us. The issue is that, the computers think much faster than brains do. The issue is that they run very, very fast, transform the world just like humanity transformed the world when we landed here, and the issue is that we die as a side effect.
Before I get to that other end of the table,
there are an enormous number of assumptions in these statements.
Before I get there, I want to get you to, before I walk this path back to that side of this. Many people in the past have predicted the end of the world when some new technology emerged. And here's a new technology, AI, and you're pretty calm about it. Is some of that calm because we've been wrong 20 times before? Or do you have really deep insights that people's fears are unfounded?
It's because the narrative presumes some discoveries that have not occurred yet. And today the systems are trained, so the easiest way to understand how the technology works is that it's doing next word prediction across a very large number of words. That's literally what it's doing. And out of that single insight, which started with GPT and the various forms of it, has given us this enormous power. So for example, it can begin to do reasoning and so forth, but it doesn't set its own objective function. It doesn't say what it wants, we say what it wants. And by the way you should solve your problem of it deceiving you is say, you have to do all the steps, and then it'll follow them. As
sometimes.
You said, it will, trust me.
Wait. Wait, this is just a disclosure.
Let me just finish.
Wait, you're telling me you didn't require that it followed all the steps. So it's your fault that it cheated. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Saying you can trust them or you can check.
These are not intelligent systems, and you're using human words to describe them. They're not intelligent. They're specific systems designed around next word prediction with all these interesting capabilities. there are a set of red lines where you and I would probably agree that we should have a serious conversation about how to control these things. The technical one that is most interesting is
follows all the steps, because it will blatantly do whatever the fuck it wants half the time. It's where the system begins to learn
on its own. And to me, that's a point where we have to decide
even if you refactor
what we're going to allow it to do.
The prompt.
And when I say we, I mean humanity.
It'll do whatever's easier.
My own view is that at that point, there will be serious regulations in this area because people like you and me will be talking about it. But I don't agree that the fundamental message is as bad as you are.
I just had to tell it now that it was
that if
using an import that it didn't need anymore.
Superintelligence is defined as intelligence
I
greater than
more
the sum
tokens
of what
cleaning up its shite than it did making the shite.
It can be driven. And my position is very simple. This stuff has to be shaped based on human values, the ones that we all take for granted. And if it's not, we should stop and regulate it.
Kate, is AI, as currently described in the large language models, as we've explored, is a statistical grabbing of words in the vicinity of topics and other words that the rest of us have used in our internet postings. So that it's trying to get the best of what is possible out of this. I don't want to simplify it more.
Absolutely correct. That is definitely correct.
So what is the risk of bias in that if it's drawing words and ideas from biased content to begin with?
Well, are you saying the internet is biased? Come on, surely not. Look, this is so important that people understand this, that we're so frequently told that AI is somehow a neutral technology. It will give us neutral answers. But AI is, of course, trained on everything that humans have ever written that's been digitized. If it's on the internet, you are probably right now part of a training data set. So that's one type of skew. So where does that come from? The internet is not an equal distributed representation of humanity.
Listening to a podcast
Secondly, you've got people in labs who decide
the pitfalls and ways it's going to kill us.
To train particular models and to optimize for certain functions. So that's another set of biases.
I was just streaming what you're doing.
And then finally, at the end of the process...
those are not so much a bias, that's rather purposeful. If you know you're doing it, is it really a bias? Bias is you don't know you're susceptible.
Well, I think at the point that Melvin Kranzberg wrote his Laws of Technology, he said that technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. And I think we can say the same for people. When you're in a lab, you're deciding what to optimize for. That's a decision that is not neutral. You're making a choice. And then finally, this is the important bit, even when you finish training a system,
I'm also recovering from shoulder surgery, so I'm doing it one-handed.
And what are called reinforcement learning with human feedback. These are commonly people in the global south, in Kenya, in Malaysia, who are being paid sometimes $2 a day to review the outputs of these models, and without often being told what the model is for. So that's another form of
I've got
human
morphine,
input,
so it's
often
all good.
with people who are really being exploited at the bottom of the chain. So at every step of the way, you are not looking at an unbiased neutral system. You're looking at a human system, and values are being built in whether you like it or not. The question is, are we being explicit, Eric, about what those values are? Because I think in many cases, if your company really is being driven by shareholder value, the value that you're going for is profit.
So Chris,
by the way, I can assure you that shareholder value is destroyed when all humans are dead.
Yeah, I think we agree on that one. Yeah.
We'll see what outlasts AI or capitalism.
So Chris, do you teach ethics, AI ethics in your class?
We do.
And how does that come out?
So there's, I think this point
half of these professors, you can tell, don't do anything with AI.
Is correct. Like AI is trained off the internet. It contains plenty of societal values. So there's interesting research that is applied in frontier labs that tries to address this to mitigate it. So it may not be a problem that can be completely eliminated, but it's not as if AI labs are intentionally propagating bias. They're intentionally trying to align AI to societal values.
Yeah, but societal values are not the same in all of society.
Did he just ignore her?
But things like fairness and safety.
She was trying to say something, you just fucking walked straight past.
Highly distributed across societies, right?
And so
she's added nothing of value the whole debate, though, to be fair.
What is your sense of the ethics of this and how it would manifest going forward?
So, it's not even just AI, it's all of these technologies that have come along, including social media earlier or privacy earlier, none of which we've learned how to solve, all of which we've waited for the problem to show itself and still not have a solution. When we come to AI, the kind of issues and the kind of ramifications are really huge. As my colleague said, AI trained on the open internet. When ChatGPT became very popular, we spent a whole semester asking it questions and querying it. And at that time, you could see how racist,
when
how
I submit the
sexist,
stuff,
how misogynist
it'll
it
detect
was based on the open
where
internet.
something occurred.
And this was what was being made available.
So at the moment, it identifies the police force.
But then their filter is like content moderation. It went too far, and then you couldn't ask it questions about something as simple as police violence against blacks.
So I've got this nice little import. So you just pull in
as if George Floyd
this data set that the government
and
published.
So these are the consequences that we as a society have to experience.
Like all
the harms,
of the different
there are questions about existential harms in the future, but there are a lot of harms happening right now, and it doesn't have to be that way. In order for it not to be that way, it depends on who this AI is servicing. And in particular, the design of the technology, the decisions made in that design is really determining what our values really will be. Our ability to, I'm driven by society has a set of laws, a set of rules that we've lived by. People died for these laws to get passed, and technology just ignores them and rewrites them. And that's true in social media, it's true in AI as well. That is, there's so many laws and constitutional protections we can't implement or protect ourselves online, though we can in brick and mortar buildings. And that's the goal of public interest tech, is to how to make that technology accountable.
Yep. So, Latanya.
Anyway, the government give us data sets.
So let's imagine a future where technology is accountable, and we find the bias and we ferret it out. It's a work in progress, as I'm sure Eric would agree. It's a work in progress, and of course, at any given moment, you can see something that's not quite there yet, or that's biased, or it's pro-Hitler, or whatever. But presumably, that's a fixable, solvable problem.
But this is different.
So it gives me the geometry of all these little shapes.
We already have a way that our democracy works.
And then when I put a GPS marker on, I can just say,
of bias,
is the marker in this section?
None of those
and if it is, I know it belongs to Thames Valley Police.
And so the question is, can the AI at least not break the law?
So I wanted to expand that. So rather than just looking at police forces, it will look at
Wild West.
The local council responsible.
Is it lawless?
The parliamentary MP who's responsible.
Correct.
And then the ward, which is like the individual councillors who are responsible.
And then they're busy correcting them. I think that's the cycle.
When you get shitty councils that don't do what they're supposed to do, you can then just spam their ward and say, go do something about this, go do something about this.
They're developing more
and
and more
I can give them a nice...
they have so-called
red
cards and test teams.
I could have this list breakdown by ward, or by council, or by parliamentary constituency, and then you can just harass your MP
and the lifetime
do
of
something
these
about
is down to 3 or 4 months as they keep improving because they're so competitive. So yes,
but at the moment,
let's go back to
it doesn't
hallucinations.
import.
Remember that hallucinations.
It did the police force bit fine.
Let me just say
but
one thing
the
about
three
what
extra
you just said about this idea.
Imports I've added don't seem to work. So I'm
and after all, they're trying to
asking
fix it.
Claude to
it takes
help
us on the outside of the technology to tell the people who are running the company, who could run their own experiments, what's wrong, and then they're supposed to fix it.
It's now removed buffering.
But there's
I swear I added it earlier.
There's an actual problem that you can't pre-test some things.
But I disagree. I mean,
I'm telling you as a comparison.
We're getting a render process, so that's good.
With warranties and compliance statements.
Wait.
I'd actually like to answer her.
No, wait, because I want to converge the answer rather than inflame it. Your testers are testing for all that they can think of. Then it gets released into the wild, where there's vastly more testing going on than you can possibly accomplish in a room of testers, or even if it's distributed to other places. And then, because you tested on 1,000, now 1 million people use it, and there's some bias that they find. So, are there mechanisms to get that information back to you, and are you responsive to that?
Well, again, I can't speak for the specific companies, but I will tell you every single one of them is pilloried in the press over every one of these examples, and these people do actually fix them. You need to give me examples where the pattern has persisted even after there's been complaints.
I'll use Facebook. Facebook was shown to, because of the way its algorithm worked, it definitely violated the ability to protect people in fair housing. That is, if you belong to a particular race or group, you only saw ads that were at a disadvantage.
Oh, okay.
That pattern's also been shown on Google with respect to credit and so forth.
But isn't that just algorithm?
Is that illegal?
It became public information. Yeah. Congress responded, and Facebook says, "Hey, wait! Thank you for letting us know that. Yeah. We will fix it." About a few months later, their fix, our students were able to show that the fix was worse than the original.
Yeah.
And so it becomes increasingly...
Because they got AI to do the fix.
The companies make it even more difficult then to do these experiments.
Isn't that just the algorithm and not some AI bot?
Again, you're not actually responsive to my point. I was talking about large language models. You're talking about advertising.
Well, I have examples for large language models too.
Out of it then.
I mean, they're not exempt. You're talking about a trajectory of technology that is not new. These technology society clashes have been following the same pattern. And it's also true in AI. And the question is, can't we learn from what we've already seen?
I was trying to make an earlier point that, which I was unable to make out. It is absolutely true that these companies are governed by US law. And if they're violating the law, they should be held accountable. We completely agree. Here's the problem. A new feature emerges in these systems that is not tested. We don't know how to test it.
Because it's emergent.
It is emergent,
yes.
Right? We have been through that. Now, we can stop that and therefore stop all progress by law by banning larger models. But as long as you have this new emergent power, which is deep reasoning, deep capabilities, and they will make mistakes, you have to be tolerant. I went through this when I was at Google in earlier versions of the technology where the system would actually do something that was wrong, and we fixed it. And we fixed it as fast as we could because we had to, because it was the right thing to do. I don't agree that these worlds are ungoverned. They're governed by US law, they're governed by shareholder pressure, they're governed by consumer pressure and privacy laws and so forth, and European law.
I know that you want to open this up to others, but I just have to say, when I was the CTO at the FTC, the Chief Technology Officer at the FTC, who's responsible for a lot of fair information practices and so forth on the internet.
Right, so when did the internet become under the...
What point was she making there? It's just like, I used to be a CTO.
I'm thinking of the what am I thinking of?
I don't know, but...
Who guides the airwaves?
The FCC.
FCC. So right. FTC is Trade Commission. Gotcha. Okay,
and the reason that they're kind of the police department of the internet because these are U.S. companies. And when I worked at the FTC, it was a lot like working in Spider-Man's den. It was so impressive and amazing what these people, many of them who had been there lifelong, would do. They were awesome. They were fearless.
Spider-Man's den?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because they were working for the underdog,
taking her off topic.
for American public with no recognition by the American public for what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And they were doing an amazing job. Except the only thing about it was everything they knew how to do was in brick and mortar buildings. They had no way of doing that online. That is true today. I was at the FTC in 2014.
What a great point.
That was over 10 years ago, and the answer is still the same.
So they're the police of the internet that don't understand anything.
To make sure and test and regulate is totally non-existent online.
I want to pivot a little bit. I want to pivot a little bit. Kate, you listed these travails, this back-end travails of AI and its costs to society.
So we can.
Are you in a position to say if we find energy solutions for them, and if we find where we can get on the lithium we want, find some new lithium ore that's plenty enough for all of the energy needs or however lithium is used in our circuitry,
I'm getting some imports.
Would you just be fine with AI? Because these seem like solvable problems.
I think that's a really great question. In my research over many years, it's really clear to me that these questions are interlinked. The societal practices, the political practices, and the environmental practices. You'll see a golden thread
of these
running
in
through
total.
them. One is the question of transparency, which Latanya just spoke to, I think, very powerfully. The second is the question of the race. The reason that we're seeing these models be rolled out so quickly, as Eric rightly said, is because there's an enormous corporate race going on.
I can do work with one arm.
And that's where you see these sorts of problems emerge, which is that we're not doing like what would happen in drug discovery, where you really have to test on a diverse population before you release, a drug into the
because the patient can die
into the mains. Exactly, but frankly, AI wasn't seen as being that mission critical even as recently as 10 years ago. Now people can die. We are seeing AI systems being fed directly into the kill chain. These are systems that are now being used in live wars
Twitch
as
game,
we speak.
$1.
So there is a very
sender.
different moral and legal pressure to make sure that these systems are working. Now, your question is like, okay, what if they were completely run on renewable energy, and if they, if we made sure that this wasn't currently right now, we see that AI systems are on track to overtake the airline industry in terms of their carbon emissions, right? That's horrifying. That you'd think would be the first problem that we'd want to be fixing. That is not what's happening. At the moment, we see that AI is using around 4% of the world's energy. It's on track to be using something like 25% by the end of this decade. We are looking at an enormous budget of carbon that is actually I'm a scientist. I believe that climate change is real. I don't think we're taking it seriously enough. But yes, if we get to a point where we have a Dyson sphere, let's go. But we're not there yet. So I think the golden thread is, how do we think about what we build before we
using AI to make a Dyson sphere? That would be pretty
those values early on, and how do we think about the implications near and long term? Because it's going to be the generations after us who live the legacies of what we build today.
Yeah, I'm compelled to catch everybody up. If you didn't know, Kate mentioned a Dyson sphere, and a Dyson sphere is an imagined means of grabbing all the energy emitted by your host star and using it in the service of your own civilization. Not just the little bit of sunlight that happens to intersect your planet, but you build a sphere around the star, gather all of that energy, then you could do what the hell you want.
Right? and my hope is that generative AI in its current growth rate might actually need a Dyson sphere.
Yeah.
We really want
a projected growth rate.
Exactly.
I want to get back to this kill chain question with Eric in a minute, because Eric and I served on a board of the Pentagon where we introduced, legislation is not the right word, we introduced a code of ethics for how AI would be used in warfare
560
on our side, on the United States. But before I get
there, it got to like 400
Chris,
and then it slowed right down.
There's been a lot of talk about deep fakes. I've been deep faked many times, and some are harmless, others. I'm not a politician, right? And I'm not declaring war on another country. So my deep fakes, though I don't like them, they don't have the same consequences that deep fakes of politicians might. So
I do like some
if
of Neil's deep fakes.
And AI is training on the internet,
that one
then
with
AI
him
could be training on its own deep fakes.
There was like a spoof movie.
And there's also AI.
And it was him
slop,
meeting up with Bankman-Fried
AI
and
attempting to be artistic.
Fighting,
and if that fills the space of images that are out there, and AI is training on those images, training on its own slop.
So good.
So, what do you have to say about that?
That's it.
I'm not blaming you for it. You're a professor and you teach this stuff. I just want to know, how does that show up?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting phenomena for AI, which is it does need a tremendous amount of data. So it learns really interesting things from the internet. So what does it learn? Well, it learns how to use language. It learns patterns of word association. It learns facts about the world. And it learns even things like some rudimentary common sense reasoning, things about physics, which you wouldn't expect it to be able to learn from text. So all of these are elements that go into a model that then later can be adapted for useful purposes. So given this general background knowledge that it's gathered from large amounts of text, it's then subsequently applied in a post-training phase where you teach it to do useful things. You teach it to be a helpful assistant.
Then you got
teach it to be a harmless assistant.
more
You teach it not to
or boundaries
disclose
to
information
import.
to someone seeking how to
Nice to know,
manufacture
like,
drugs or
why it
weapons.
stopped at
Or
562.
you govern its behavior. You say, rather than a general assistant, I want you to be an encouraging tutor. So all of those things are elements of the training pipeline that end up with something that actually can have value. So I think let's not lose sight of the fact that although this could be technology that goes wrong, although it could be technology that encodes bias, like we as researchers, we as model developers, we as users, like we have a role in determining which direction this technology will go. And I believe that it has a tremendous amount of good to give to the world in addition to the potential pitfalls.
Nate, how do you put up guardrails for this? Because we just heard a beautifully described future of AI, but you end up training the AI. I don't want to spend my time training a freaking robot. I'd rather train other humans.
Features equals list change, consuming the entire streaming iterator into memory,
but that's effort you're investing in something that you're then going to interact with. I suppose that's okay. What I'm asking is, if we don't want the world to end, how do we think about
buffering?
There's a lot of dreams of AI doing exactly what we want. There's a lot of dreams of getting it to follow the law. There's a lot of dreams of getting it to act nicely. But, one thing I agree with Eric on, the behavior's emergent.
There's a queue
One thing I agree with Eric on, you can't pretest this stuff.
10-minute
we can't pretest every aspect of it. You can pretest a lot of it.
You can pretest some of it, but we're growing these things a bit like an organism. We cannot, encode 3 laws of robotics deep into these things' minds. We are not writing these things like code. And we can grow them, we can try. Eric mentioned, there's these people, they have these evaluation cards, they have these safety teams. What's going on in these safety teams, the 2 biggest places people are putting their safety efforts are what's called interpretability research, which is trying to figure out what's going on inside the AI's heads. And these evaluations, these model cards, which is trying to figure out how dangerous the AIs are.
Well, it's giving me the button back.
If someone was making a nuclear power plant in your hometown, and you went to them and you said, hey, I hear that this uranium stuff can have lots of energy benefits, but also can melt down when things go badly. What have you guys got that makes you think you're going to get the benefits and not the pitfalls? I've heard all of these wonderful stories about the benefits. What makes you think we're going to get the benefits and not the pitfalls? If the engineers say, oh yeah, we've got 2 crack teams working on this, the first team's trying to figure out what the heck is going on inside, and the second team's trying to measure whether it's currently exploding.
Let's try the next one.
That's not a good sign.
This is council data.
There are ways to get a handle on this. People talk about the benefits, people talk about the dangers, and they talk about navigating the course. We are not on track to get the benefits if we make these things really smart. We can't pre-test it. We're going to roll it out, find the problems, and then figure them out after the fact. That's fine when they are still a lot dumber than the humans. That's not fine if you keep making them smarter, and that's what these companies are trying to do.
Cindy.
Yeah, I'll maybe just give a slightly different take on this. You said we're trying to study interpretability to figure out what's in their heads, And I think when I think about interpretability, for me, we already know kind of exactly what's happening with these machines, right? There is a mathematical equation we can write down that's there, right? The challenge is, even though we can characterize it mathematically, right, as humans, it's hard to kind of understand or interpret its reasoning, but, in a way that makes sense to us, right? But this is just because the underlying structure of these things is very complex, right? It's
justify that everything is a mathematical equation when some of the models now have like 1 trillion inputs,
right? And so I think the interpretability question is more just, can we take a mathematical equation that would take a stack of paper a mile high to
this plus this equals evil,
to write out? Can we explain that in a real sense? But I don't think there's any, there is no mind there, right? It's just kind of mapping these huge internal structures that are very abstract into kind of human scale conceptual understandings of the overall reasoning.
Cindy, how might you program agency into an AI?
Yeah, I mean,
like the Terminator, for example.
Okay, so yeah, so
just tell it to kill everyone.
Okay, so when Neil,
random example,
you can't run fast enough, then you're due for destruction.
What he means, right, is he wants to see the presence of some sort of like persistent, like self-motivated, goal-oriented behavior, like organized around the idea, right, that this AI is actually an agent in its environment. So not just responding to
prompts,
funny
if it triggered
also,
like a new
pursuing goals long term.
Cycle of human evolution, because we had to out-evolve
because
all
I
the
think you
robots trying
already
to
believe that
massacre
there
us.
is like goal-oriented behavior in these machines, which I don't see any presence of.
We become strong enough to
right. So
unless we program in
steal.
You mean a
Unless
goal
if
it sets for itself.
Well, okay.
No one's programming. We're growing these things.
We're growing. Okay, so yes, but like
that's
growing.
That's scary when you say we're growing them.
I mean, yeah, it's not a biological thing, actually, right? I mean,
it's not like old school programs either.
I mean,
it's some new thing.
but like, I don't think it's going to get agency by just, training on larger data sets, right? I mean, to get agency, there has to be some real engineering things that are happening, like it's not like a bigger neural network or something is ever going to be able to like pursue goals, remember things, like take actions, like, I think that to do that, you have to have like kind of like outside scaffolding that are real, that are different things, right? It's not the same underlying.
Wait, look, Tanya, can you imagine an AI with agency that satisfies all of your concerns? That would be like a good AI, right?
Well, I would, first of all, before we can even get to the issue of agency, the issue of these emergent behaviors, and even if it is an AI with agency, this is wrapped in a business model. And the goal of the product is to make money for the company. And I'll go back to social media as an example of that. We're not the customer of Facebook. We're their product. Our eyes on a page is what makes them money, and the advertisers are their customer. And so you can't just talk about, I'm building this AI and its emerging behavior, and it may even get agency. The question is, how is the business selling it? What are they making it available for? What are they saying it's to be used for? If it's to be used to help me hire people in my company, then it needs to show that it's not going to violate the Equal
It's not going to hire people in your company. It's going to replace them.
If it's being hired for other purposes, like for credit cards, it needs to show that it's not going to violate the Fair Credit Reporting Act and so forth. And that's the level of responsibility that only the designer of these companies can do, because they're the ones making the product.
You make an important point about the business motives. Now, if I remember correctly, and this could just be, I'm imagining this, Eric, Google was so large and had so much cash flow, you had the luxury to just explore without any particular obligation to the bottom line of the quarterly report. Like AlphaGo, all right? That you're gonna win, you're gonna be the best Go player in the world. And what's the one for chess that was?
Stockfish?
No, but the Google's one.
AlphaZero.
AlphaZero. To be the best chess player, did that have real financial consequences, or was it was just bragging rights, and that was just a fun thing for your company to do?
Well, it was research.
So it was to achieve a goal of making.
Once we achieve those objectives, we actually then use that to solve a problem called protein folding, which is the single largest discovery in biology, I think, in the last 50 years.
They solved it.
And AlphaFold will result in an enormous number of new drugs,
protein folding on my PlayStation 3 back in the day.
And so forth
that
and
was
so
before
on.
that.
Research has these sort of strange things where you try one thing, you make a discovery, you link them together. AlphaFold is a very good example of the unintended effects of people trying to play games.
Your hyperbole there undersells the fact that AlphaFold was given the Nobel Prize in physiology for that discovery. So what you're saying is that research these were steps towards this greater goal that, in fact, was achieved.
Well, I think that this narrative is ignoring the enormous reasons why people are pursuing AI. So let's start with healthcare. Let's start with medicine. Let's start with drug discovery. How about energy solutions? We're going to be cooked as a world unless we come up with better energy sources. One interesting thing, I'm working on data center architectures, and it now looks like if you have enough land, the solar and battery backups are more cost effective on a present value basis than natural gas combined cycle things, even in the United States. So it shows you that innovation happens, and it can happen in the right way as opposed to just the wrong way, which everybody is talking about. There's certainly secondary effects, and there's no question. But let me say once again, this stuff is done under U.S. law, with people paying it an awful lot of attention. And if there's laws that are missing, let's pass them.
Kate, why not make AI solve all your problems?
I'd like to interject one thing as well. So I think,
please.
We talk about like the profit motive that drives the creation of AI, but that's not what drives the researchers. Right? There are genuinely good, thoughtful scientists.
Researchers just want to do cool things.
Right.
And they have the luxury that someone is paying them to do it.
And I think AlphaFold is a great example of this, right? Like, that is AI. That is a scientific advance that's incredibly important to human health. And I think conflating the fact that companies have profit with the motive for why this is being invented is incorrect.
Can AI solve our AI problems?
I mean, I love this debate because I think, Chris touched on something really important. We're talking about, where is this kind of noble, following the path of science. We just saw Meta sign checks for researchers for $100 million. That's their salary. So let's just be clear, we are getting basketball salaries now, well beyond that. In fact, they're breaking records. These are not necessarily people who are doing it out of the good of their heart. Like, this is an extremely moneyed field. And I think it was originally researchers who were really doing this just out of curiosity 10, 20 years ago. We're in a different world now. And I guess what I'd love to talk about is that world. I'd like us not to have the AI optimism or AI pessimism discussion, but the AI realism discussion.
All right, so in that world, we're gonna lose a lot of jobs.
I mean, look,
in that world,
and now this last one is like
exactly
so
right.
Award
and
is
we're
a
talking
breakdown
about the most significant
of like sub areas within a given council.
We're hearing about this
so
from the people
interesting
building
to see
these
if this
you can look
this should
through
tie
all
together.
Of the
So
people
if
who
I
are running
filtered
frontier
on
AI companies are saying
Bournemouth
that we could be looking
Pool,
at the loss of 75%
there should be
of new jobs. That's
many
for
wards,
new graduates. That is a horrifying number. And I think Tanya's point is so important here, is that we do not have the governance infrastructure or the planning to deal with what could happen to the labor market.
So we need to be more nimble in our legislation and laws to keep pace with this.
Well, we also have to be realistic. Who is making the laws right now? I mean, Eric is talking about, like, we have laws. Like, let's just be clear. We have never had an administration make less interest in regulating artificial intelligence. We've seen regulations produced by previous administrations completely zeroed out, and we've seen the threat of preventing every US state from making its own AI regulation.
And can I just add on to what Kate's saying? Many times I'll say that we live in a technocracy, that our democracy has already been changed. The technology designers—
Tech bros are in charge.
The technology designers are the new policymakers by the arbitrary decisions they make and the products that they produce. And we have no way of producing oversight. By the time, I'm a computer scientist, my whole life has been about how to help society get the benefits of these technologies, more and more AlphaFolds, but without these crazy harms and undoing our society. And it doesn't have to be this way. What's forcing it this way is that the technocracies, the technocrats who are in charge, are ignoring that responsibility.
Okay, just if I... There is something called the lesser of evils, because before the tech bros had the influence that they currently did, you had Congress deciding on technology. That was disastrous, because they didn't know, what button do I push? How do I, and they're making laws and legislations to constrain that. So I don't have a solution. I'm just saying, if tech bros are influencing the laws, how much worse is that than tech ignorant people who are otherwise running Congress making the laws?
So again, right now, us as researchers who are trying to provide experiments to these companies,
we got
government
2,300 words process.
The legal right to have the legal right to oversee these companies can't really do this job. The person sitting in the seat to do the job is the company itself, because they have access to the technology. They can run the same I have undergraduates, a team of undergraduates, who don't even get paid, and we've got to show Google and other places what's wrong with their technology. It's not like they're paying us to do that. You're telling me they can't run these same experiments?
All right. Nate, do you have any sense of
That's such a nonsensical
what
argument.
In this future that Kate sees?
We've got undergraduates that we don't pay. Great.
Jobs are replaced, and now you're making a product, but no one has money to buy it because nobody has a job because you replaced their job with AI?
Well, you're not fucking paying them anyway.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I expect 100% employment.
That's not...
but I do also expect it to take the jobs. And you'll put
Wait. Just to be clear,
because everyone will
other previous advances in technology displaced workers. No doubt about it. But there was expansion in other sectors. You know, buggy whip manufacturers went out of business, but auto repair centers came in just after the turn of the century. Here, this pace seems faster than what society's capacity to respond might be. And so, shouldn't we be worrying about an entire class of unemployed people who cannot buy the services provided by the AI that displaced them?
Yes.
You know, I think probably some people are gonna want to worry about that. Probably society cannot.
Especially the unemployed people, yes.
Especially the unemployed people. So, you know, economists will tell you about how if you manage your economy correctly and if things are going, slow enough that people can respond and find new jobs, society can absorb a lot of job loss. You know, the world used to be something like 95% farmers.
There's just no need to have an entry-level person anymore.
We can get the world running on 2% of the population being farmers, and that does not mean 93% of people are
You don't already
unemployed.
know how to architect
AI
something,
is
you're
different.
fucked.
Will we or won't we?
That took a century, by the way, but go on.
It took a while, yeah. But,
century.
Will humanity adopt to this one? Frankly, I'm like, man, I'm sort of looking at a different problem here.
I'm just saying, Eric is talking about a 3-month timescale for the advances on these things.
He's also talking about this recursive self-improvement, about the AIs that can make smarter AIs that can make smarter AIs, and so my role in this is to say, hey, I'm not saying those are fake problems. Those are real problems. Some of those problems are starting to happen now.
But
kids in the schools, autonomous weapons, real conversations we should be having.
But
we're also racing towards super intelligent AIs that we don't have any idea how to point towards good stuff. A lot of this, like, oh, well, they make some mistakes. We can't pre-test. It goes off the rails. That's fine when it's dumber. We're rushing towards making it smarter. That's going to just kill us. And we all have common cause in stopping that. The people who are really pro-automation and are like, oh, we're going to have a universal basic income. Don't worry about the jobs. And the people who are like, that's ridiculous. Taking people's jobs removes their ability to like have any leverage on society. Both those groups of people don't want to die to a rogue superintelligence. And so my role in this is to say, can we all join hands on the part where we don't die to a rogue superintelligence?
Okay, I think we have good agreement on that one. Kate, what you were thinking? What were you thinking, Kate?
I think part of the problem here is how we frame this discussion, particularly around jobs.
I don't think we're all going to be at risk of
in previous
dying to a superintelligence
the
anytime soon.
Weaver was replaced by the loom, or
probably
we had
die
the horse and carriage
to a superintelligence.
The deal was that these
like
more
by
menial
proxy,
human tasks
just by virtue of it taking all of our jobs and us all dying of starvation.
Intellectual and creative challenges that people
I don't think we're going to have like Terminators anytime soon.
This is a different revolution.
Why?
And in many ways because it is coming for creative and cognitive labor. It is coming for the thing that, in theory, automation was supposed to be
big, scary, fucking murder robot.
And what we're starting to see is it is, in fact, of course, white-collar labor. It's the jobs that so many of us would be like, that's what you want to do. That's what you train to go and become a lawyer, or you go and study to be a computer scientist. Who were some of the first people being laid off in this wave? Computer scientists. Because what can we automate?
She's got a job.
Right?
Don't point to her.
LaTanya will be fine.
She's fully employed here.
But this is a fundamentally different question. When cognition and creativity is being automated, we can talk about how effectively. There's clearly a lot of problems there. But that is the shift that I think we have to be very serious in talking about. I think it's easy to make historical analogies without looking at the fundamental nuance and difference of what is happening here. And it really is something that the people in this room are going to have to deal with. This is not 100 years' time.
Chris?
This is now.
I'd also like to give a call to action for people in this room. I agree that this is a much more significant problem than the idea that a Terminator is going to emerge and kill us all.
No, it's not.
That's a lovely...
No, just kidding. Just kidding.
That's a speculative fiction that's great and worth thinking ahead to the future, but it's speculative fiction. The job loss is something that we all play a role in, right? So I think that there should be moral clarity here. If you are a business owner, if you are a business leader, if you have influence about hiring in your company,
if you're a
then
stockholder,
in the not too distant future, you'll be faced with a question, which is AI is suddenly making everyone twice as productive. So the question for you will be...
Making half of the many people twice as productive.
The question for you will be, do I want my company to be more productive with the same staff, or do I want to be the same level with half the staff? Right? And that is a question that we as a society need to make a decision about. And I strongly encourage you, in any position where you have influence over this, to go to the path of growth, to try to expand what your company can do with the same staff. Like, you don't need to replace people, you need to figure out what additional tasks they can serve.
So, Kate, about this replacement of cognitive
and then as the models get better, you sack off
talents.
More people.
Let me take a middle road there, middle position road. There were teams of artists hired to reproduce some idea that was set down by a set designer or by some lead artist in a project. Is that much different from the schools of art that we know about from the Renaissance, where there's the main artist who's the great artist, and then everyone comes in and apes that style?
See how many there actually were.
My sense of this is, and I could be wrong, we have expertise here to correct me, that AI today is really good at copying what's already on the internet. I can tell ChatGPT or Claude, I say, you see this scene here? Paint it the way Van Gogh might have seen it. And it will come back with the same color palette, brush strokes, and we'll be there in these swirly patterns, and we say, that's what Van Gogh would have painted. Now, if I then ask it, paint this scene in the style of no artist who has ever lived, what's it going to do then? And so for me, I think AI in that space is boosting the expectations we should have of ourselves, of our true creativity. Because true creativity is not doing what someone else had done just a little better, it's doing what no one else has done. And I don't know if AI has that ability if it's being trained on what everybody else has done.
I could hop in on that a little bit here.
Please.
Training
AI has not made this before.
We've also heard it's just math, it's just
but it's done all the subcomponents.
Training on text that humans produced does not require, like, that is a harder problem to predict that text than producing the text in the first place.
It's created a login interface.
An example that might resonate with people here is there was a great astronomer, Tycho Brahe, who recorded the position of all the stars, and in particularly Mars, each night.
Planets.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
All the stars and also Mars.
You're standing next to the director of the Hayden Planetarium, and you got that wrong.
Something I should probably fix.
He also recorded the stars. He also recorded the stars, but Mars is the one that Johannes Kepler tracked.
Yes.
Right. So Johannes Kepler, there's a big heist. He stole the journals, the data. But Tycho Brahe, when he was recording the stars and planets, he just looked at the night sky and wrote down where Mars was. If you imagine training something to predict the entries in Brahe's journal, it does not have the luxury of looking at the sky. You can solve this problem. You can read a bunch of the entries in Brahe's journal and predict the next. To do so, you have to discover the laws of the motions of the planets. Johannes Kepler did this, Brahe never did. So an AI trained on only Brahe's journals, trained on only predicting the text that Brahe produced. That training target incentivizes the AI to figure out something that Brahe never did. Now, can AIs today do this? That's one question. But training an AI to predict things humans wrote down does not limit it to doing only things that humans can do.
Yeah.
And we are starting to see AIs, we've seen ChatGPT or GPT 5.1 produce some novel physics contributions. We're seeing them start to inch into ways that humans haven't quite done things. And sometimes, when a new scientist comes up with a new idea, they aren't necessarily coming up with a wholesale, entirely new way of thinking, as opposed to making small amounts of thinking progress and using a lot of other thinking progress that came from other people. They're standing on the shoulders of giants. So the things we're doing with AI can get them there. There's a different question of whether we're currently there, but it can get them there.
Okay.
And this idea that they're just math and so it won't get there, that's like saying, a house cat is just biochemistry, so no sort of cat is dangerous. A house cat is just biochemistry, and a house cat can't kill you, but that doesn't mean that tigers are fake.
Wow.
Why is that getting a round of applause?
Was that a logical leap from house cats?
I was shoehorning it in. You looked like you wanted to move along.
That's right. No, we're running short on time here. I want to get back to a very serious point. I was appointed under Obama to serve on the Defense Innovation Board, a freshly created board of the Pentagon that was tasked with advising the Pentagon on all the ways technology might influence the present and future warfare, not just how many missiles are in your silo or how many push-ups the soldiers can do. Are there other innovations that are possible? Eric Schmidt was the chair of that board. I was privileged to serve under him for this. We toured military bases around the world, spoke with soldiers, very dedicated to their...
Every single one of them wanted his autograph. I'm serious. We would show up and it's like all these young men, it's like, oh my God.
So Eric, right about the time, drones were becoming sort of more lethal and more real, and we felt it necessary as a committee, as a board.
I do find it pretty nuts how you're more likely to die from a drone now than you are from a Terminator.
Of engagement regarding how and when AI would be brought into the chain of decisions that would lead to lethality. And that was a code of ethics, really.
That would be a really shit movie back in the 80s when this thing just
what would happen without such guidance. My question to you is, our motivation at the time was the knowledge that AI was not perfect, that AI would make mistakes. And you never want someone to die because of a mistake. Yet, of course, people make mistakes. So at what point is AI good enough in that space to say, I trust AI over a person and let AI run with the decision and not a human? Is it just that at the end you want to have someone to blame? Because you can't blame the computer, you can't put the computer on trial, but a person you can. So what happens when AI can find the enemy perfectly?
So everybody here has an opportunity to read the report that we issued under DIB.
DIB, Defense Innovation Board.
And the Pentagon actually adopted it and published it as their guidelines. And I'll roughly summarize what our thinking was at the time. All war is terrible. All military activity is terrible. It involves the destruction of people and so forth and so on. It's just horrible, trust me. And the question is, if you have to do it, can you do it using AI to be more accurate and more successful? That was the question. And we debated this at some length, and we concluded that, at least at the time, and I think it's true today, AI is not reliable enough to rely on it to make those decisions. And it's unlikely to be so for a very long time. That was our conclusion.
I disagree. I think it will
sort of makes sense, right? Because you can't tolerate sort of a percentage of errors where you might be able to tolerate them in other areas. And so what we wrote was that any use of automation in that area, essentially called lethality, needed to have a couple of things. It needed to have been tested. It needed to have a time and a space duration, And most important, there had to be a human who was overseeing it. They had to know what was going to happen ahead of time. They had to have tested that it was going to happen, and then it had to reproduce it. If it didn't, then that was a major problem. And that's ultimately what the Pentagon agreed to. This is a compromise because these tools are very powerful, but they also make mistakes. And so that's ultimately, I think, where the Pentagon ended up.
Now that was some years ago now. We're at least a decade forward from that. Is AI good enough so that you would have scripted this differently?
I don't believe you and I and the others would have come to any other conclusion on the lethality part. The lethality part is obviously the most important one. It's the most important decision that's made by members of the military under military law and laws of war and so forth and so on. What is true is that the AI planning and recognition, that is the eyesight and the ability to do planning, is now far superior than what humans. That's not the same thing as lethality.
Okay, so these are subtle differences in the capacity of AI that are not always recognized or appreciated.
It is done.
Well, I think we all agree that these systems are not perfect, and at least in things which are life critical, like deciding what to do with a patient, right? Deciding when an airplane is in trouble, anything involving military kinetic conflict. Think twice before you empower AI because it makes mistakes.
All right, I want to thank you for that, Eric.
Yeah, look at this.
And thank you for your service in that. Just to land this plane, what I want to do is go down the panel and ask, given this 3-month horizon for new stuff that happens in AI and that whole sector, let's just fast forward way into the future to 2030. And ask.
So I've got the data there now.
Wait. How long ago was ChatGPT? How many years ago? 3.5 years ago.
Now we need to update
1 or whatever, the first public version of it. So
update
let's
this
fast forward 3.5
so that it
years
also gets the other
2030.
constituencies.
What is the state of the world and its relationship with AI? Let's start with you, LaTanya.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the vision that we would like to see.
Sure.
And
that you're not just passively hoping it'll get there, you're actively working to achieve this objective.
And it's a future that is really amazing in the sense that everyone is far more productive. I can be in multiple places at one time because there are agents that know my preferences and my desires, and they represent me in various contexts.
Just to be clear, you guys use the word agent to refer to an AI representative of your needs and activities.
That's correct.
Okay,
and so they might negotiate a purchase arrangement for me or be in a meeting and represent my interests. And so my productivity is just orders of magnitude greater than it is today.
And you're fine with that?
I'm fine with that, provided that every single one of my uses of AI in making me more productive is actually able to show that it gives me a warranty of what it will do and how it will represent itself. In other words, the same thing I get when I get an appliance, I get a warranty and a compliance statement.
Got it.
I want that same thing on these agents, and I'll be able to do that. In some ways, what you guys were offering to the military, there are also many societal harms that aren't about immediate life-threatening, but are about our ability to have a democracy, about our ability to understand truthful information and so forth that are at stake and need those same kind of guidelines.
So it'd be like an underwriter's laboratory certification that we have for our actual appliances, but applied to your AI agents.
Page.
Okay.
I think
2030.
2030. I think we have 2 paths in front of us. On one path, we move towards a place where we see what is already one of the most concentrated industries in the industrial history of the planet become even more concentrated, and even fewer people have their hands on the levers of power, and democracies start to erode. And these systems ultimately are making decisions that will decide what kind of job you can have, what kind of quality of care you get, what kind of options you and your family will have going forward. The other path is that
just remind me, I'll get these numbers wrong, but the sense is accurate. There are 4 or 5 companies on the S&P 500 that represent like 30% of the total wealth
of the United States. Correct.
Some number like that. The number might be precise, but is the census correct?
You're exactly right.
Okay.
And if you look at the numbers of people who are actually running these companies, you're talking about a tiny handful of billionaires. They are the people who are getting to make these decisions about how these tools will be used and what problems they will be used to solve. The other path is that we realize this is the most important public conversation that we can be having right now, which is why I'm so glad we're gathered here today having this discussion. And we decide that actually this is too important to be left in such a small number of hands of people who are not democratically accountable. You asked what the difference was between a representative and a tech bro, is that we vote.
It's literally not interesting. It's quite the opposite. But basically, I made this because let's put it into blind everyone.
Translated from Tagalog.
So I had a friend of mine that was killed on the roads a couple of years ago, and then since that happened, the police have this thing called OperationSnap. And the way that you report stuff is you would say, like, I'm willing to go to court, I've captured some footage on a camera, and you fill this in, you put all your details in, you say where it happened, what road it was on, what date and time, what the registration was. So you've got like this horribly manual form. You've got to say, like, if you were driving, if you were a pedestrian, then where in relation to you the thing was. And then this bit is like your witness statement. And then for whatever reason, when you're even on a mobile, if you type into this field, like, it just grows for every character that you type. So by the time you've written your statement, this thing's fucking like just loads and loads of empty white space. And then you've got to like confirm, like, does the footage have the right time? And then the two options you get are like, yes, the time is correct, or actually no, this one is the time is correct. So like you've got to reread all these things to make sure that it's like you're giving the correct statement of events. And if you fuck this up once, the police will reject it, and then you've got to do it all over again. And you've got 14 days in which to do it, like from the date of the thing happening to like when the police have to tell them that they're going to prosecute them.
Mate, I swear they do this SHT on purpose.
Yeah. So this whole thing is just a complete shit show, and it's just, I thought I could do it better, so I've just decided to like give you a form. You start, you pick the file. So in this case, we'll get the video. And the video has the date on it, the device make and model, GPS coordinates. It'll tell you exactly where it was straight away. It's in the background doing a boundary lookup to see which police force covers it, and then it just popped in. And then the AI, like, I've got this AI assistant to help you write your witness statement, so you can just say, like, car was running everyone over, and then tell it to generate you a draft. And then it will say, like, yeah, on whatever, like, this was happening.
My man is making a better app than Gov themselves. This is actually sick. D.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you, like, what information it used to help write it, other things to check. This looks awful at the moment, but I was fiddling around with Claude Design yesterday, and it actually made it look ridiculous. So, yeah, we've got an ad coming up. So this is like how Claude redesigned the look and feel. But it's the same sort of thing. It's like wizarded it, so there's like various steps rather than one big form. Like adds a nicer list and stuff. So like, yeah, I think we might incorporate a few of those things in a minute. Yeah, essentially, like, you can just pull up a map. It'll tell you like where something happened, and then it'll be like, yeah, this person's parked on a zigzag. And what zigzags do is they tell you not to park there because it obstructs people at crossings. So like, you're less likely to see someone trying to cross, and then you run them over. But yeah, and then I've got like this. This uses the data from the government to see like if the vehicle was taxed. So have they paid what they're supposed to pay to be able to use the road? Have they paid what they're supposed to pay to make sure their car is fit to be on the road? Like, is it safe? And then have they insured the car so if they kill someone, like, they're going to pay for it, essentially. And then those are separate offences in themselves. If you're driving without insurance, then the fact that your car isn't insured and it's been seen on the road, like, you could override or add a new offence here to say, like, driving without insurance, which the current system doesn't do. So yeah. And then I've got this dashboard that we built just to kind of show like the total submissions, how much money they could have collected had they actually issued fines, how many penalty points would be issued, like the average of across them all, vehicles that aren't taxed, that aren't MOT, that don't have insurance, number of reports.
Awesome, man. Is this just a personal project or something? Not sure if you mentioned.
Yeah, it's just me tinkering. If it becomes something like that gets used, that'd be cool, but I don't know whether it will or not. Yeah, like, it will show like when occurrences happen the most. So like, if I further broke this down by council or region, like the councils themselves could determine when to put people on the road to go and enforce it. But yeah, that's it. So yeah, we're just trying to the bit I've just told it to do is this mapping. I want the other mappings, so like not just to the police force, like which
Agent 57 says.
Yeah, which council's responsible, because then in this case it would be
QVQ71 says. Thanks for explaining BTW, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, like, this is the council responsible for this parking enforcement. So I could then have links to their website, so you could complain to the councillors, and then within this council there'll be a section of the map that is the ward, and the ward has like specific people tied to it. So it'll be like, say like 2 people are in charge of that specific section, so I can then add them in and be like, hey, you two, you own this, make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do to ensure it's enforced. And if they don't, then I can have like a shit list of people that don't need to get elected next year. So let's see, what did it do? Oh, okay, it was waiting for me to do a bash command. But yeah, I'm running low on Claude credits, so I've got like 1 session left till it runs out, and it doesn't reset till Monday. So might have to switch to Codex. But yeah, the other project I've got that I want to start after this, like once I've added few more features is I can scroll up with one arm. So this thing. So I wanted to make like a QR code based exfiltration tool. So that's like my next product. None of this is actually active yet. It's all empty. But, yeah, should be quite cool. We'll see if we can have a server that just generates like a shitload of QR codes, and then the client will just listen or screenshot the QR codes and then rebuild the data on the other end. I should probably fix the unit tests as well. Why didn't that work? VRN was rejected. So why did that test fail? Didn't meet the assertion. Total reports this month. That's correct, isn't it? It's all they're a month apart, maybe. Time zone now minus 10 days. That's probably why, because the time zone would still be the same month.
What happened to the arm, if I may ask?
I fell off my bike, and it I didn't fall off the bike. I went round. I was going in an underpass, and this little kid was on his bike in front of me. He was doing like a 3-point turn on the.
I was going to ask if it was parkour related. D.
Yeah, so he was doing like a turn on the path in front of me. So I slowed down to let him get out of the way. And as he got out of the way, I was like, "Oh, well done, mate!" Congratulated him for moving. And then because I was looking at him, I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. Clipped my pedal on a small change in the pavement type. So there's like a tiny little curve about that big, and the whole back wheel span round. The backpack I was wearing came off my left arm, and then it flew down my right arm, and then got caught on my elbow, and it just pulled, the weight of the bag pulled the shoulder out of the socket. So my whole arm was just floppy. Managed to grab it and kind of chunk it back into place.
Oof, that's awful, man.
Yeah, but it's just been dislocating constantly since I've done it. So they've I did an MRI scan on it, or it did an X-ray and that showed nothing. Did an MRI and then that showed that all the soft tissue had kind of separated from the inside of the socket. So they've had to reattach all the loose cartilage and tighten it all up again. So yeah, I got 3 weeks off work, probably another 4 months of recovery after that. But yeah, having to do everything left-handed is fun. I wish it was parkour related though.
One-handed typing, or are you managing?
Okay, we all go together or we go one at a time.
Yeah! One-handed parking.
Parkour! 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 I'm right behind you, Andy! Come on! Do it! Yeah!
Parkour!
Parkour!
Yeah, no, like if I use my, I'll probably show you. Yeah, if I can use my mouse just about.
I haven't even seen the US Office, man. I just know the clip. I'm a fake lol. Need to watch it, I think.
But usually my mouse is over here, but I can't like move my shoulder over there. I've got to twist my whole body around. So at the moment, I'm mousing like this, and then I'm typing like this.
Asha, yeah, I see.
So yeah, all good. Right, so it's added a new view, which... Oh, it did change the serializer as well. Okay, good. So that should have changed the display. Adds all new 9 fields, including which is missing. Let's go codecs for this one. Add to codecs thread. Why is this test failing? No! Alright, we can rectify that. Seven, 8, 9. Let's try that again.
You probs get this question a lot, but if you were starting out from no coding knowledge, would you go about it the same way as you did when you started? Just with AI now in the picture. Barney says.
You tweet, Shudi?
So, I mean, I came at this, I didn't have any coding knowledge to begin with. I went to uni when I was 25, I think. So, like, I always was interested in code, but I didn't, like, know really how to do any of it. I've made, like, a couple of really
I wouldn't start
scripts.
with a crippled cooked arm Baby Yoda.
So yeah, I made like some Pascal scripts and like very basic things. So I made like
Lol.
I made a thing that would like there was a game called Navy Field that I used to play, and in order to get the best sailor,
QVQ71 says, LMFAO that voice, man.
yeah, to get the best sailor in that game, you had to like generate a sailor, so all the stats would generate, and if you didn't have like I think the best stat you could get from purchasing a sailor was 1212, but you could generate one that had 1111. So you would get that best stat by just like rolling the character. It either was or wasn't 1111. If it was like 8-9, you could delete it, generate another one, and you just do that constantly. So I made a script that would generate the character, look at the pixels on the screen to see if it was 1111, and then if it wasn't, it would like loop through and keep generating one until it had one that was 1111, and then it would save that character, and you could trade that with other people as well. So like I was making some decent wedge just selling these characters. But that was where I started. I was just making like stupid little things like that. And when I went to uni to finally like learn all the concepts behind like object orientation and like how to actually write code, like it became less about like just Googling random things like how to figure out what the code was. It's more about like the architecture and the like how do all the different pieces interact. Well, and a lot of reading. Like doing a lot more of the security side of things. So yeah, I think if I was to do that now, I would have done it a lot younger rather than I dicked around at school a lot. So I would have not dicked around as much and like got a lot more out of studying younger. But yeah, I mean, if I was to start now, I would start with AI. I wouldn't have to figure it all out on my own, because I would have just fumbled around with Stack Overflow or like forums before. Whereas now you just tell AI, like, I want you to make this. And then it's kind of up to you to learn the other stuff behind the scenes. So like you want to be constantly asking AI, what is the best practice way of doing something? And also when it's creating code, like, I don't know why it's got stuck here, but let's start a new one. But like, this is the test failure output that we've just got from my GitHub action. This is the test that it identified. But I could also add in here, like, I am a noob. Please explain why this test failed and how to fix. Because it's going to fix the test anyway, but it should explain why it failed. I think it failed because this time delta is wrong. It's only looking back 10 days. So if it runs the test within the same month minus 10 days, then it's always going to be a total report within the month. but that's just my quick look at it. And I think I was right, because it's coming there, like now, -2 days. Yeah, there we go. But it's you're using AI now as a tool for helping you learn, rather than you having to figure it all out on your own. So like you can have a back and forth conversation with the AI and kind of use the AI as your teacher. And then there should also be a say like, where can I learn more about Pythonic unit testing? And it should give me resources. So yeah, like rather than you wasting hours trying to fucking find all this shit on your own, like here you go. Go to the Python unit test docs. Go to the Django testing docs. Go to PyTest and learn how the PyTest framework works. So yeah, so it's like there's lots of things. I didn't realize this until I went to uni, that uni doesn't teach you how to do something, it teaches you how to learn how to do it. So a lot of it becomes like, this is how you do research, this is how you figure something out. And then this then just becomes a tool at making you more effective at doing that research. So, and that's how you stop it replacing you. Right, I'll turn the TTS back on then.
LMFAO, Barney says.
So you're a cheater.
I am a cheater.
QVQ71 says. Right time with you. Do you also tune your AI with like an instruction or something? Someone at work gave me some massive prompt to put in LOL. As a tool, yeah, exactly. I always try to ask why something works, etc.
Yeah, so this AI isn't tuned at all. It's just the basic, like OpenAI codex. Like the only tuning I've done is when I asked it a question. Then I gave it the test failure as an output, as the prompt, and then you can attach the test itself. So just by highlighting the text, and then I can right click it and send it to the chat or to the codex thread, so that codex then knows that I want it to look at this test specifically. This was the output. It's got a lot more context then as to what it should be doing. Claude's a bit different. I was trying to do some stuff with Playwright. So in order to make it better at doing Playwright related activities, I gave it the Playwright MCP service. So then when it wasn't working, I was just like, look, stop trying to do it through my code and through Docker. Like, because we were running it, finding it wasn't working, not being able to look at like the actual screen output. So it was just like guessing where buttons were going to be. Whereas like as soon as I gave it MCP access, it could run the code itself, look at its responses itself, and then it tweaked the code to match what the actual like website was displaying. And then yeah, so it just worked. So I've got like a few skills and stuff on the Claude, just to kind of make it better at doing its job. But yeah, mostly it's all stock. I don't tweak that much of it.
Gotcha. Cool. I've been using Claude mainly, but I don't pay for it at the moment.
Yeah, I mean I don't pay for it either yet. I just used Barney's 7-day free link, so see if I can find it. Is he online yet? No. He's in the Office Extreme list. Oh, Gar's online. That's cool. Romans, there he is.
Let's see. What else can we try here? Maybe I can...
Yeah, check out Roman. He uses Claude to do like hack the box attempts, and he's been doing a pretty good job at it so far. But he's got a link on there to get a free week of Claude Pro. Which is that link.
Msek says. Web link. QVQ71 says. That's my main funds at the moment. I'm on HDB most of the time, lol. Working on CPTS if you've heard of that.
I have not. That's new to me. But yeah, it's 2 a.m. here, so I'm going to wrap up and head to bed. But if Gar is on, let's go send a raid over to Gar. And he can have 16 more people watching him. But yeah, thank you for popping in. Thanks for the raid earlier. Psycho, that was a like unexpected boost to the numbers. And we got the data ingestion working for these other inputs, so I just need to finish tying that up, get it to actually display on the UI. But that can be tomorrow me's problem. Alright, nice one. I will see you all soon. I'll probably be on tomorrow, because it's not like I'm going anywhere or doing anything interesting. So yeah. Alright, mate. I will catch you later.